Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the July 16th Finance and Audit Committee meeting to order. I'd like to first recognize that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Sinamic First Nation. Our clerk today will be Ms. Sheila Gurry. We have Councillor Thorpe attending electronically this morning. Welcome, Councillor Thorpe. Today's Finance and Audit Committee meeting is being held in accordance with the Community Charter and Council Procedure Bylaw 2018 number 7272. So that if during the meeting any member of the gallery has a question related to an agenda item only, please sign up on the sheet located on the table near the double doors to my left. Note that the Council Procedure Bylaw has been changed and states that questions will only be on staff reports and other business items. Looking around the rather full audience this morning, I believe most of you are either staff or delegations, and the rest of you, I think, have been at enough council meetings that I'm not going to go through the recitation of the need for decorum, the request not to applaud or jeer or do anything untoward during the course of the council meeting. The first item on the agenda is the introduction of late items. Ms. Gurry, please, we have some.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. For late items this morning, we have agenda item 7B, drop-in hub update, adding the following delegations: Leslie Gerard, Sydney Robertson, Jin Lum, Anthony Grattle, Ruth Taylor, Vanessa Decker, pardon me, I don't know how to pronounce the second part, and Jean Fox. For agenda item 7C, fencing and parking lot improvements, City Hall and SARC, we're adding a delegation from Vanessa, again, sorry about that, Decker. And then we're adding agenda item 7J, Nanaimo Builds for the Future Plan Update to the agenda. And that's it, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. I'd note also Councillor Armstrong has joined us electronically. Motion for adoption of the agenda is amended. Moved Councillor Perino, seconded Councillor Hemmens. All those in favour? Any opposed? None. Motion carried. Motion for adoption of the minutes is circulated. Moved Councillor Eastmere, seconded Councillor Hemmens. All those in favour? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. We have no presentations, but we do have a number of reports today. The first is options to extend the E&N Trail south of Columbia Street. Ms. Osborne, Ms. Davis, good morning. Please, you have the floor.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. The report before you today provides information on the opportunity to extend the E&N Trail with a soft surface trail connection working with the Island Corridor Foundation. The E&N Trail is situated on land owned by the Island Corridor Foundation and is managed by the City of Nanaimo as parkland under an agreement between the City and the Island Corridor Foundation. In April of this year, a new soft surface trail was added between Hecate Street and Columbia Street, an additional 465 meters. The additional trail was funded by the city for $40,000, and the work was completed by the Island Corridor Foundation and Southern Rail. The extension of this trail has been very well received within our community. There is opportunity to continue working with Island Corridor Foundation and Southern Rail to extend the trail to Columbia Street, from Columbia Street to Binkie Street, and to continue from Binkie Street to 7th Street if desired. The trail base and the infrastructure installed with this soft surface trail could be overlaid with asphalt in the future if so desired. Funding options and breakdowns are in the report for the two proposed sections. Staff are recommending that the Finance and Audit Committee recommend that Council add a new project to the 2025 budget for $148,000 to extend the E&N Trail from Columbia Street to 7th Street, funded through the Strategic Infrastructure Reserve Fund. Myself and Charlotte Davis, Deputy Director of Parks and National Areas, are here to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think Council's had a chance to read the report. Anyone care to make the recommended motion? Moved Councillor Hemmens, seconded Councillor Gesselbrock.
Question?
Question, Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question through you. Should this go forward, when would it be completed, or when would it be started and completed?
Through the Chair to Councillor Perino, we could work with the Island Corridor Foundation and Southern Rail later this year, so we hope to have it completed before the winter.
Okay, good, thank you.
Councillor Hemmens, then Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thank you, Your Worship. Indicating my support. This has been a really nice little project in the South End.
Thank you. Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thanks, Mayor, through you. Just reiterating that the project that's already been completed is a great example of partnership between different community agencies and putting in a trail that's gotten kids off of the rail line, the active rail line, and onto the side, and it's become very highly used, and also has been completed at a fraction of the cost of what the initial project that was a paved route put in. So this is a win on all fronts, so thank you.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? And any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. The next is the drop-in hub update. Mr. LeBerge and Ms. Wood.
Morning, Your Worship. I think there's a bit of limited seating, so I'll come up here just for the introductions. So good morning. Today's presentation provides an update on the drop-in hub and includes its implementation, services, collaborative approach, and both the successes and challenges in supporting unsheltered individuals. We'll also touch on the neighborhood impacts and mitigation strategies, including the role of city staff. Today we have Eric Gagnon from Nanaimo Family Life Association and Corey Corfield from Island Crisis Care Society, who will be co-presenting alongside Christy Wood, and will share additional insights and will be available for questions. Alongside Ms. Wood and I, we also have Chief Tim Doyle, the city's emergency program manager Evan Lloyd, and Constable Adam Taylor from the Nanaimo RCMP Bike Unit here to assist with any questions. Finally, Naomi Woodland, Director of Community Impact and Investment for United Way BC, they are able to answer any questions you may have about reaching home funding in Nanaimo related to the hub. With that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Wood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. LeBerge. Good morning to the committee. I'm just going to jump right in. Just starting off, this slide provides a summary of how the hub came to be, outlining the key steps in funding, partnership development, and site selection process. So the committee will recall that the city allocated $584,257 to match funding from the federally funded Reaching Home program. To deliver on this investment, the city entered into a service agreement with United Way BC, and United Way BC, for folks who don't know, are the community entity responsible for the Reaching Home funds in Nanaimo. As part of this agreement, United Way BC committed to several responsibilities, including working with the city to ensure hub providers were working hard to be a good neighbor and doing what they can to address any issues stemming directly from the hub service. They also were committed to ensuring that hub providers were working collaboratively with health and safety agencies, monitoring service quality and budget oversight, participating in the long-term transition and sustainability planning, and recognizing the city as a key partner in setting priorities and making decisions. On September 17th, 2024, United Way BC released a call for an expression of interest, or an EOI, through the Reaching Home grant portal. And this release, unfortunately, was delayed until September from the original summer timeline due to the internal resource staffing challenges. The call closed on October 4th. So we had 6 agencies responded and 4 submitted formal EOIs, but not all were eligible or complete. 2 agencies, I'd like to note, noted that the available funding wasn't sufficient to operate a standalone hub. Recognizing the resource constraints, staff from United Way BC, city staff, the systems planning organization, and participating agencies worked together to identify a collaborative model. Ultimately, Island Crisis Care Society, supported by Nanaimo Family Life Association, was selected to deliver the hub services, and the proposal was reviewed and approved by the Community Advisory Board on November 13th, 2024. Meanwhile, city staff worked with United Way BC staff, ICCS staff, and Nanaimo Family Life to review 12 potential properties.
Ms. Wood? Mr. Prop? Are you attempting to record this? Pardon me? Are you attempting to record this meeting? Are you attempting to stop? I intend to stop you, yes, sir. You do not have permission to do so. Mr. Prop, I'm going to ask you to stop now. Stop what? Are you setting up a recording device, yes or no? Certainly looks like it to me, sir. Sir, you have a tripod in front of you. I can only presume you intend to record, and I want to make it clear that is not allowed and you do not have permission to do so. Ms. Wood, continue, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. City staff, just as a reminder, which was in the report, city staff did work with the planning team to review 12 potential properties for a hub. Many were unsuitable, unavailable, or landlords declined to lease to a service of this nature. One promising option at 250 Bastion Street fell through after CMHA, which is Canadian Mental Health Association Mid-Island Branch, withdrew their offer to sublease to Island Crisis Care, following concerns from other tenants. This setback unfortunately caused a 3-week delay in implementing the hub. With winter approaching, public pressure mounting, and serious life safety concerns for unsheltered individuals, the only remaining viable option was 55 Victoria Road. A lease was secured on December 16th, just 3 days after the final service agreement between United Way BC and Island Crisis Care was signed on December 13th. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Corfield, who will talk about some of the services offered there.
Thank you. And just for the benefit of the audience, Ms. Wood, we have Erica Gagnon, Director of Shelters and Guest Services, Nanaimo Family Life Association, and Corey Corfield, Director of People, Culture, and Engagement, Island Crisis Care. Thank you and welcome. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. As was mentioned, my name is Corey Corfield, and I'm here today representing Island Crisis Care Society, the daytime operator of the Hub Drop-In Center. We recognize that this project has come with real challenges and that the community has felt its impact. And at the same time, I want to share with you today the meaningful difference that the Hub is making in the lives of some of Nanaimo's most vulnerable residents. At the Hub, we provide low barrier, essential daily supports to Nanaimo's most vulnerable citizens, individuals who often don't or can't access services elsewhere. We offer basic needs, simple meals, sandwiches, hygiene supplies, washrooms, and clothing, shelter and housing, including emergency and extreme weather shelter, connections to supportive and market housing, income and employment. We help people with ID, income assistance, and job connections, as well as health and wellness, so access to primary care, mental health, and addiction service, even perinatal care and Indigenous cultural supports. On average, we welcome 77 unique people per day, but our highest attended day saw 187 visits from 129 unique individuals, with over 12,650 visits so far in 2025. To date, we've supported 314 plus unique individuals, and we are working with 18 partner organizations, including Island Health, BC Housing, and Indigenous support teams. The Hub is also a central access point for BC Housing Heart and Hearth responses, and we are managing a by-name list of over 170 individuals, helping to prioritize people for upcoming supportive housing units. This coordination has been key to moving people from homelessness into homes. Thank you.
Please.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. So my name again is Erica Gagnon. I'm Director of Shelters for Nanaimo Family Life. And a lot of the services that are offered during the day are also offered during the night. So I'm going to speak to a little bit more about what benefits having people sheltered overnight within our program bring to the table. So when people have access to overnight shelter, the whole community benefits. The overnight shelter at the Hub provides safety, stability, and a necessary pathway to long-term housing, helping people in this community regain their footing and access to critical services. Access to overnight shelters is not just a humanitarian effort, it's a practical and effective step in the community to address the homeless citizens that often live on the edge of our society. And curfews at our overnight shelters also mean that no current guest is physically outside, either walking around the area or tucked away in a place for the night they may not be welcome. For the clients we serve, a safe shelter provides immediate protection from violence, exposure, health risks, and reducing the likelihood of overdose, illness, injury, and creates a stable environment. This stability builds trust. It is the relationships and the trust built between staff and guests at these shelters that contributes to their and the community's success moving forward. The Hub gives shelter access, again, to some of the most street entrenched in our community. often people who, due to their past or current unsafe behaviors, have precluded themselves from accessing other shelters or services, sometimes all other shelters or services in Nanaimo. The hub not only allows them access to shelter, but access to individualized advocacy with their next step forward.
So just speaking to some of the impacts and success stories that we've seen during the daytime at the hub, at the heart of ICCS's work is one simple thing: relationship building. The hub is often the first place where people feel seen, safe, and heard. And from that foundation, we are seeing transformation. I want to share with you just a few small stories from the hub. Maria and Conrad came to Nanaimo with their 2 dogs. At the hub, they're connected with a pharmacist and a doctor. Now they are in recovery and on a housing list. They tell us, now we have hope for a better tomorrow. Miles reconnected with a nephew that he hadn't seen in years by chance just outside the hub. He was able to buy a used car and is now returning north to work and reunite with his family. Gord, who has been sober for 6 weeks, is going back to his welding job in Red Deer. A guest with a disability who had his walker stolen multiple times was finally able to secure housing with help from the hub and partner organizations. Riley has remained sober for 2 months and just got a job with another Nanaimo support organization. And he told us, "You inspired me to want to help people." And we have another story of an 83-year-old mother who was able to connect with her son who's experiencing homelessness at the hub. Over peanut butter sandwiches and coffee, they play crib together and work to reconnect. The mother told us that this is the first place that they've been able to share a meal together in a place where they both feel comfortable. In addition, ICCS has launched a clean team made up of guests and staff who walk the area regularly, picking up trash and responding to community concerns. Guests themselves have even started defending the hub from misuse, asking others not to smoke near the entrance and reminding others to be good neighbors and respectful in the area. These stories reflect what happens when people have a safe, stable place to begin healing. We're not just offering services, we're rebuilding lives. On Monday, during a visit to the hub, our incredible program manager, Lisa, shared something simple but powerful with me. Guests are starting to smile again, something we haven't seen in a very long time. It's moments like this that remind our team that the hard work they do each day is making a difference after so much hardship. And it's those interactions that remind us that our team, and today I want to remind you that the hard work we're all doing together is making a real difference in the community.
Mr. Prop. Yes, Leonard. Control your behavior. You are not to speak out during the meeting and disrupt the proceedings. People are gathered here for important business, not for you to make a circus of this public gathering. Thank you. Please proceed. Mr. Prop, if you don't control your behavior, I'm going to ask you to remove yourself. Mr. Prop, I'm asking you to leave this chamber now. On what grounds, Leonard? Section 133 of the Community Charter. Miss,
something to say, you got a silence, you don't, you piece of shit.
I apologize for the interruption to proceedings. Please carry on.
Thank you. I just wanted to speak to this slide with the bus in the snow in particular. So this February, during extreme weather shelters at Bevan Centennial Park, the hub played a vital role in getting the word out to the street community that shelter was available. It acted as a collection point so that in cooperation with BC Transit and the City of Nanaimo, we could transport not just people and their belongings, but often their pets to safety, which can be a barrier to seeking shelter. This again reduces the strain on CSOs and RCMP and other outreach and emergency services, who often are the people trying to get that notice out all over the city on very short notice, along with their regular workload, which can be higher in times of severe weather. During those emergency weather openings, we were able to find beds at the hub, at another one of NFLA's shelters, or alternative shelters within Nanaimo when needed or requested, creating even more connections because we had the hub.
So I just wanted to echo what Erica is saying. The other thing that we have talked about together is the unique partnership opportunity that we've had. Island Crisis Care Society and Nanaimo Family Life working together is something, two large organizations working together is something that doesn't happen all the time. And it's been such a huge benefit and such a great opportunity to serve the needs of the community in a real way. So I know that this work isn't always visible, but as you see the photos of the insides of the hub, I wanted to invite each of you personally to please come and visit the hub. We see for yourself the dedication of the staff, the collaborations with partners, and the small but significant changes happening every day. We know that this isn't a perfect solution, but it is a solution, and for the individuals that we serve, it is life-changing. Thank you.
Okay, to the committee, I'll go over some of the neighborhood impacts that we are seeing from the hub. So the committee will be well aware that there have been longstanding concerns about 55 Victoria Road due to the mix of services offered and the complexity of client needs. The hub has added more concentration and shifted activity to the Nichols Street side of the building. The first table shows CSO service files for the 100 block of Victoria Road in 2024 and 2025. The second table focuses specifically on service files linked to the hub for 2025. Calls for service, just so the committee is aware, comes from the public, agencies, or other departments, and the proactive files are initiated by CSOs when they're out doing proactive patrols. The majority of the service calls are to assist individuals who are either substance affected or needing social assistance. For example, 35% of the CSO files are to assist other agencies. This would include Island Health, BC Ambulance, other nonprofit agencies in addition to the hub service providers and RCMP. 23% are for wellness checks, and 14% of the calls are to address social disorder. There is a jump in calls for service related to the hub versus to calls for service in the 100 block of Victoria Road. In addition, where there is an increase in call for service, there will naturally be a decrease in proactive service files since CSOs are already in the area. The next slide looks at RCMP service file data from January to June 11th, comparing 2024 and 2025, focused on 55 Victoria Road, the 100 block of Victoria Road, and the 100 block of Nichols Street. These service files reflect a range of calls that are connected to street disorder and homelessness. So these would include things like disturbances, trespassing, well-being checks, suspicious persons, drug activity, violence, and property crime. It's important to note that unlike the CSO officer data, the RCMP files are tied to specific addresses and don't differentiate whether an incident involved the hub or services that might be directly delivered at 55 Victoria Road specifically. And here we have the number of Nanaimo fire rescue calls for service at 55 Victoria Road. So between January and June 24th, there were 30 calls in 2024 and 24 calls in 2025. And fire incident data for nearby block along Victoria Road and Nichols Street between Crace and Finlayson Streets are also summarized here. These include overdoses and fire-related incidents such as nuisance burning, structure fires, and vehicle fires. As with police data, these numbers don't distinguish whether individuals involved were unhoused or housed, or if they were accessing services, living nearby, or simply passing through. So just want to remind the committee again, we do have reps from RCMP and from fire here if the committee does have any questions that they would like to ask. In addition to the formal service data that's been presented in the report, we've heard directly from community members, and many of you will hear later on today. City staff have received emails, phone calls, and in-person feedback from residents and local businesses. The most common concerns reported include increased open drug use, traumatic behaviors associated to individuals who are substance affected or who have mental health illnesses, criminal activity, and general social disorder. Since the hub opened, traffic safety has also become a more visible concern, particularly regarding individuals that are impaired by substances while they're navigating sidewalks or crossing Nichols Street. Staff have been told of multiple near misses involving vehicles and pedestrians, both in private conversations and within social media. This final slide on neighborhood impacts shares information from the South End Community Association, which gathered public feedback at their South End Day event in June. Residents identified hotspots for litter and debris, most notably around the 100 blocks of Nickel and Victoria, Halliburton between Crace and Finlandson, and Nob Hill Park. These locations have been prioritized for community safety officer and clean team patrols, and as well as the Island Crisis Care Hub clean team. There were other locations further noted from the hub, like Kennedy Street, the Esplanade, and the Railway Yard, though these areas have long experienced challenges and cannot be tied directly to the hub's activity. Feedback from both residents and the Nanaimo Area Public Safety Association highlights a growing perception that the concentration of services in the area and the addition of the hub has led to cumulative impacts on the surrounding neighborhood. And finally, anecdotal reports from the RCM Bike Unit, CSOs, and businesses suggest that while visible homelessness and social disorder has decreased in other areas of downtown, social disorder appears to be more concentrated along the 100 block of Nichols Street, particularly near the hub itself. In response to the challenges at the hub, city staff are meeting weekly with staff from United Way BC, Island Crisis Care Society, and Nanaimo Family Life Association. The SPO also attends the weekly meeting as providing data collection support. First, in terms of enhancing community safety, the hub service providers began holding regular meetings with all tenant organizations at 55 Victoria Road. And I want to point that out because those conversations have not happened prior to the hub's implementation there. So the other service providers that are in there are ARC, AVI Health, Nanaimo Addiction Clinic, and the Safe Outreach Pharmacy as well. These meetings are really looking to improve on-site coordination and problem solving. Island Crisis Care and Nanaimo Family Life also meet weekly to troubleshoot any operational issues. A community advisory committee is also being implemented to bring together neighborhood reps, funders, and public safety officials to collaboratively address concerns and facilitate a more coordinated response. And we're working directly and looking for direction from the neighborhood association on scheduling and who should be involved in that. Second, regarding facility and service management, service providers have been working with the building owner to explore how to expand indoor space to bring more people inside to reduce the loitering and improve flow. This includes moving the entry into the hub off Nichols Street. We are looking at implementing a new entry in the coming weeks. BC Housing has also extended shelter hours in March, helping to increase on-site staff presence, but there is still a gap that exists when there's shift change between the two organizations. So that really increases the invisibility. So while staff are on site, there is an hour gap in between in the morning and in the evening where there are people waiting for the next service to come along. Housing access is, as mentioned previously by Ms. Gagnon and Ms. Corfield, housing access is also being prioritized for hub users with the HEART team attending weekly to complete applications. So 3 hearth sites are now operational. We've got 50 at 250 Terminal, 59 at 1030 Old Victoria Road, and 50 at 1300 Island Highway. And I'm pleased to say both 1030 Old Victoria Road and 1300 Island Highway have just started tenanting the site. So that is really good news. Move-in dates are yet to be determined at 1298 Nelson Street. They have 78 proposed units that will also be looking at this prioritization list. Third, behavioral boundaries have been implemented. Individuals acting disruptively may be temporarily suspended, and RCMP or CSOs are involved when necessary. But we also do recognize that this also may have impact on the neighborhood if people aren't able to access the hub but are hanging around in the neighborhood with nowhere else to go. Island Crisis Care, as mentioned, has also hired a new outreach worker, and they're coordinating a daily peer team clean team to clean the area outside of the hub, and they've expanded cleanups to other parts based on that neighborhood feedback that we received. Fourth, to support monitoring enforcement, there's 2 new CCTV cameras installed in late June to assist with monitoring and reporting unsafe behavior. The RCMP bike unit patrols the neighborhood regularly, and staff are assigned to monitor the outside and redirect inappropriate activity. In terms of city services, you've seen from some of the stats that the CSOs attend the site multiple times daily. The clean team supports a daily cleanup and a weekly deep cleans, and staff work closely with United Way BC to ensure service agreements are being followed. Finally, just want to note for the Finance and Audit Committee that staff did present to the Public Safety Committee in June. Feedback included the need for strong good neighbor practices, which Island Crisis Care and Nanaimo Family Life are implementing with a complex, vulnerable population, moving the entrance off Nichols Street, and keeping sidewalks clear. While there's concerns around traffic safety, there was no concrete strategy suggested, as it's tricky. Nichols Street is governed by the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. Finally, there was a lot of discussion about broader concerns expressed about the concentration of services in this area. So the original goal, just as a reminder of the hub, was to provide a safe space for unsheltered individuals with complex needs, to connect them to housing and health services, and to reduce the presence of people sleeping and being in parks, doorways, or other public places. While staff initially hoped to establish more than one site, this hasn't been possible due to the cost and just the sheer complexity of the population that's involved. That said, without sufficient housing, healthcare, and basic needs services, people will continue to live on the streets. We know the hub has impacted the neighborhood, and these issues will remain in the general neighborhood without these types of services. However, the impacts would manifest in different ways. Right now, we're seeing high demand at the hub, especially as winter shelters have closed and other basic needs services decline. The site is averaging 52 new first-time visitors each month. And while the hearth units will help relieve some of that pressure, they don't meet the full demand. More shelter options and accessible day spaces are needed to serve this large population. As mentioned, in terms of immediate improvements, work is underway to relocate the entrance off Nichols Street to Victoria Road. We recognize that that will bring more concentration to the Victoria Road side. Hub service providers and city staff met with fire staff last week, and we're exploring the options of changing that entry to deal with the traffic safety and the concentration on Nichols Street. In addition, Island Crisis Care Society is working to adjust their staffing model to work with the new entrance. There's some minor upgrades that are required to make the entry more accessible. However, that work is expected to be completed in the coming weeks. Long term, a more suitable facility is needed, one that ideally includes on-site showers and laundry, which would allow us to replace the temporary shower program at Caledonia Park. But identifying such a space remains difficult given the resource constraints and the leasing availability. We also recognize that wherever a hub is located, there will be some neighborhood impact. It's inevitable. These are visible, complex challenges that no single organization or government can solve alone, especially when we're attempting to address the root causes of issues we're seeing around the hub. These are the effects of the mental health and substance use crisis. While long-term housing remains essential, it doesn't address the immediate needs or the public disorder we're currently seeing. We need multiple hubs, more shelter beds, more health and basic services, and more daytime spaces for people to be in order to address these neighborhood concerns. We have to continue to engage organizations like Island Crisis Care Society and Nanaimo Family Life, who've been strong partners with deep experience. I think the situation could have been significantly worse without their leadership and collaboration, or with other agencies that do not have proven track records to work collaboratively or in a coordinated fashion. Finally, it's important to note that these challenges with daytime spaces are not unique to Nanaimo. Across the province, local governments are struggling with some gaps in basic needs services. For example, recent meetings with my colleagues from the City of Victoria, Kamloops, West Kelowna, they all report similar challenges. We heard on the news today, City of New Westminster is facing the same challenge. So it's everywhere. We're all struggling to meet this. Local governments, as you know, don't have the tools or funding to address these humanitarian public safety issues on our own. And we know that enforcement alone isn't effective, especially for individuals who are not capable of engaging with punitive systems. So this slide explores some of the financial overview of the hub and outlines 4 options for the city's funding commitments moving forward for the committee to consider. For 2025, just as a reminder, the city allocated $584,257 for hub daytime services. In addition, the $500,000 has been allocated through the Community Advisory Board through the Reaching Home program for the fiscal year that starts April 1st, 2025 to March 31st, 2026. We currently have a service agreement with United Way BC in place until December 31st, 2025. BC Housing is also funding 20 overnight shelters beds at the hub until September 30th, and there is an expectation that temporary winter shelter funding may be used to extend these services through the 2025-2026 winter season. The CAB is exploring multi-year funding and will discuss budget allocations at its upcoming meeting for the next fiscal year. With that context in mind, here are the 4 options for City Council and Finance Audit Committee to consider. So option 1, continue full funding for 2026 and begin relocation planning, which is the recommended option before the committee. The city would continue to match Reaching Home funding to maintain the daytime services through 2026. The $500,000 currently set aside in the Special Initiatives Reserve for Homelessness could be used to support this. We would also begin for relocation to a more suitable site, working with United Way BC and service providers to secure a lease elsewhere. Shower program funding could be redirected if the new location includes those facilities, allowing Caledonia Park to return to regular community use. Staff could return to council in the fall with an update. The advantages of this option would include the continued access to basic services and the stories that we've heard through Ms. Corfield and Ms. Gagnon, while also enabling long-term relocation planning. It allows agencies, police, and CSOs to continue referring individuals away from inappropriate public places to a centralized service point. The disadvantages include limited flexibility for any other city-led homelessness responses. Reaching Home funding is not guaranteed beyond March 31st, 2026. And while mitigation is ongoing, neighborhood impacts would continue in the short term while a new location is secured. And it's also very possible, and to be honest, that with the limited resources and availability, a new location may not be identified. Finally, staff resources would also be required to support both operations and relocation efforts. So option 2, the committee could consider is to provide the bridge funding for winter 2025-2026 only. So we would extend the city's agreement with United Way BC until March 31st, 2026. Ensuring service continuity through the winter, critical winter months. And during this time, staff and providers could explore alternative funding models. And the advantages would include ensuring short-term continuity without long-term financial commitments on behalf of the city. And of course, the disadvantages would include the loss of a centralized access point for basic needs, health and housing supports after March 2026. So option 3 would be to end funding as outlined in the service agreement on December 31st, 2025. So with this option, the city could conclude its funding commitment, and service providers would need to scale down services accordingly and plan for closures. Again, it's important to recognize that even with hub services ending, the mental health and homelessness crisis and its effect on the neighborhood would still persist. The main advantage of this option is that the city's funds could be reallocated to other projects or priorities should the committee see fit. However, again, the disadvantages mean losing a centralized drop-in hub for individuals needing support. We would no longer have a reliable site for responding to extreme weather or for coordinated efforts like the Heart and Hearth housing programs. We would also likely see an increase in unsheltered individuals in that area and parks, public spaces, businesses in the neighborhood and elsewhere in the city. And CSOs and RCMP would have nowhere to redirect individuals when asking them to vacate public spaces. And option 4 before the committee would be to terminate the agreement prior to the end of 2025, and this would require a minimum of 30 days notice. And of course, we would need to consult with the city's supply chain team to address any procurement or financial obligations. So in summary, all 4 options come with trade-offs, difficult options to consider. So staff are seeking direction on how the committee would like to proceed, recognizing the continued need for services, the financial limitations we're faced, and the impacts on the surrounding neighborhood. And of course, we're all here to answer questions, and that we can bring forth people from the gallery as well.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to encourage questions at this stage. Staff will be here as likewise the other folks, and we do have 7 delegations to hear from this morning. So much appreciate the presentation so far. In terms of delegations, the first is Leslie Gerard. Mr. Gerard, if you can just introduce yourself for the record, and you'll have 5 minutes, and I'll let you know when there's a minute left. Okay. And don't be shy about leaning forward into the mic and speaking.
Sorry.
Thank you.
All right. My name is Leslie Gerard. I'm a resident at 94 Nickel Street, a direct neighbor to the hub facility. Since opening in January, this hub facility has brought both, I will say, a lot of negative, but some positive as well, depending on individuals. We've dealt with an increased amount of violence, both physical, verbal, dog fights, people defecating on our fence, an increased amount of garbage, that reaches from the hub facility all the way up to 100 Nickel Street. The daytime organization I will give a little more credit to than in regards of the nighttime organization. I have a lot of problems. To my understanding, they're supposed to kind of be outside of the hub facility from 10 till midnight. After speaking with some of the staff at the night organization, they tell them out of sight, out of mind until midnight. We don't want to see you anywhere around. They come up to my end of the neighborhood consistently causing issues, causing problems, fighting, arguing, waking my kids up. Both my kids' bedroom windows look into the property of 80 Nickel Street, which also looks into the parking lot of 55 Victoria Road. Whether you have an entrance on the front side, back side, in the parking lot, it creates multiple issues. There needs to be a lot more enforcement from all organizations, I believe, in that building. CSO does an awesome job in my neighborhood. Anytime that I do require help from them to kind of address situations, they are very helpful. They do have a lot of issues. I am also aware of the fact that staff in the shelters are having issues, multiple with individuals, from aggression to violence. I believe it was the nighttime, they had a dog fight inside of the shelter as well. I speak with many of the street community in my neighborhood. I'm 20 years recovery, so I believe seeing people human for human, respect for respect my neighborhood, my family, the businesses, I'll respect you. You cause problems, we're gonna have problems, and you won't be welcome anywhere near. I go out every morning, water my whole entire sidewalk, keep people deterred. It is dangerous for traffic, pedestrians, not just those from the facility. I've watched people get shoved out into traffic, having to step out, nearly getting ran over, people running from one side to go use dope, coming back over to the other side. It's got to change. Multiple levels. I'm not opposed to people needing help, people needing resources. It needs it, but something's got to be done to deter the dealers, to deter the people that are coming down to buy medications that are no longer getting it from their doctors. I see it on a daily basis. My whole entire neighborhood is under surveillance. I've sent videos, pictures to mayor and council as well in regards of the neighborhood impacts. I can speak on some of the positive stories that were mentioned as well. I have spoken with some of those individuals, more specifically Miles. I speak with him on a daily basis. Very good gentleman, very polite, very helpful. Gord as well, I know which one that is. He keeps my neighborhood clean, but I do have a lot that go in, they get their hot chocolates, their snacks or sandwiches, they come up and the garbage is littered all over my neighborhood up the road. Very rarely do I see any of the organizational staff coming up to clean up. When they do, I do say thank you. That is more often the daytime staff than the nighttime. The daytime organization, like I said—
1 minute, Mr. Gerard.
I see it, I'm watching my timer, thank you. They do put in the effort to keep it clean. They do put in the effort to keep people inside, but more enforcement needs to change. Something needs to be done about safety. I had to follow a young man home after getting involved in an accident. Individual pushed out into the road, bucket truck jammed on his brakes because you don't expect somebody to be shoved out into the road in front of you. And another one hit him, yeah, following too close, but these are dangers everybody faces. So as a direct resident, neighbor, and many other neighbors, mayor, council, we ask for help and changes. It's getting out of control. My kids are feared. They don't play in the yard anymore. I get told by RCMP, contact my local MLAs or reach out to city council. That's the help I get from them. CSO, much better help. I got 8 seconds left. Thank you, Mayor, Council, for your time.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hemmons has a question, please. Appreciate your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your grace under this. I have a million questions that you'll hear me ask afterwards. My question for you is, what would you like to see, given the 4 options that you see in front of us? As the direct neighbor, would you prefer to see us close this in December, close this after the winter months, give it a year, try to relocate it, or close it now?
As I've said in many conversations, I'm kind of a person that runs down the middle. I believe something needs to be found and addressed for these individuals. But the hub facility myself, the impacts, everything else, new location needs to be found. There's too many resources all put into that one building that creates a massive impact. I watch people come from up top, they come down below, and it's just separated. Some people are getting help, but not everybody. It needs a separate location away from it.
Okay, a follow-up if I may. I think you're crystallizing this
Sorry.
conundrum that we have, that we all believe in the services that are being provided. We believe in the stories, the good news, the people who are being connected to shelter. No. But the spillover is unmanageable. The spillover is simply not okay, even with those good news stories. So I just want to share that to say that this is the rub, and I'm hearing, well, I'm sensing. Actually, I'll leave that question for later. Thank you for your time this morning. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you very much. The next is Sydney Robertson. Ms. Robertson?
Your Worship, Councillor Armstrong had a question.
Sorry, Councillor Armstrong. Should have been paying attention to the screen. My apologies. You're muted, Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, I was trying to find the screen. Thank you very much for your presentation. You mentioned that you noticed a big difference between the night and the daytime. Can you expand on that a bit to tell us exactly where you feel the differences are?
The differences that I find when it comes to the nighttime organizations, they do put in a little more effort to try to keep the people kind of off the streets that they can. I see more effort from the daytime organization coming out, keeping the neighborhood clean. The nighttime organization, as I mentioned, they tell everybody from 10 till midnight, out of sight, out of mind. You could go all the way up to Parksville, and this is directly from some of the staff that I spoke with on an evening in regards to the issues in my neighborhood. From 10 till midnight, out of sight, out of mind. If they can't see them out front of the shelter, they don't care. As long as they're back by midnight and in by curfew, then it's all good, which then pushes all the issues, the open drug use, altercations that end up happening from people who are waiting for their bed in the shelter at night up into my neighborhood to early hours in the morning. The gap time in the shelters does create issues. I will give that as well. But the daytime organization puts in more effort to try to monitor the surrounding neighborhood than I find from the nighttime organization. I've watched nighttime crews step over people, walk over the sidewalks, not trying to check on them, move them along. Daytime will. They'll wake them up, hey, you know, shelter's open, come on down, can't be down here. So it's issues, right? They both got to get on the same page. I've heard frustration from daytime staff when I've gone down to speak with them as well too, in regards of the impacts from the neighborhood. And that's how I found out that there was two completely different organizations between the day and the nighttime. And for a while, I thought it was just one direct organization.
Thank you very much. And as Councillor Hammond said, thank you for your very respectful and well thought out delegation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Not seeing any further questioners. Ms. Robertson, good morning. You know the drill.
Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity to speak on behalf of the South End Community Association. We recognize, I want to say right off the top, that everyone is active with the best of intentions, including city staff and the operators, who we know are very capable operators. But I'm here today to talk about the weight of the unintended consequences we're facing, and I know you've heard some of it. I think there may be some parts you haven't had time or focus to consider. The impact on our community is significant, and it's ladled on top of everything the South End was already carrying. I believe we're seeing quite a drop in neighborhood morale, and it makes sense because it's hard to feel positive about your neighborhood when people don't want to come visit at your house, or you can't get a good night's sleep, or you have to hack back the shrubs at the front of your property so you can clean under them every morning. I'm also hearing a lot of worry for the future. We believe that what we're seeing with the hub is one example of what overconcentration looks like, and we're scared about seeing more. I think we're seeing a drop in public perception of the South End. I'm certainly hearing it from other Nanaimo residents, and I personally believe we're seeing some of that kind of disrespect for our neighborhood play out in more speeding up past our parks than I've seen in other summers. Litter is up, and I know for certain that we're hearing cynicism from our emergency responders that really worries us. There's a lot of, well, what do you expect living in this part of the city, right? That really concerns us. I'm hearing a growing lack of distrust for our levels of government, and we're seeing a rise in reactivity, people just getting head up. It's raising tensions and creating dangerous situations. We know that young families are moving out. It's already happening. SICA itself is also getting pressure. We're getting pressure to become more combative. And on top of that, way too much of our time and attention is swallowed up by all the housing and service sites. There are so many in our neighborhood and more coming, including the hub. So we're spending time with all those tours and meetings and phone calls and discussions and emails instead of planning the community events and things that we know build a strong community. So the hub is taking a toll. I need to just take a moment to push back a bit on clarify maybe the notion that these folks were already in this spot and it's just, the service is just happening differently. We were not seeing hundreds of people every day on the Victoria Road sidewalk before. We were seeing a lot of street disorder. We were seeing a number of people. I don't think anyone anticipated the numbers that the hub is seeing. It's important because it's the intensity of those numbers that I believe is the real issue. When the hub was introduced to us in December, the intent was that having indoor space would lessen the disruptive behavior on the Victoria Road sidewalk. We expressed our worry that the site would attract more disruptive behavior to that spot, not less, and I'm sorry to have been right. I want to be clear as well that we don't really have a problem with any of the services that are happening inside the building. It's the activity that happens outside that's hurting our community, not just on the Nichols Street sidewalk, but on all the sidewalks around the hub. When people are encouraged to disperse, they only disperse so far. And we also see that the especially intense behaviors of people that we think are experiencing a break from service because of their behavior inside the hub, that is dispersed into our neighborhood. It's not safe for people inside the hub. It comes to us. We're not demanding today that the hub be shut down immediately, though I gotta say, it's tempting and it comes up. What we do demand is that if you vote to continue the operation, that it be done much, much better. We want to hear concrete strategies about finding better sites. We understand the challenges. I personally believe it's going to involve public money buying property for this to happen. We urgently need a strategy to address the numbers of people gathering near the hub, meaning we need more than one. We must need at least 3. I understand the financial constraints. We also need a strategy to mitigate the strain on nearby neighbors. And I want to just mention one suggestion that came out of the Public Safety Committee for using the parking lot, which we see as sitting empty, mostly empty much of the time, and we really wonder if there's a way to, excuse me, channeling Jagmeet Singh today. Thank you for getting my joke. We're really wondering if there's a way to use some of the parking lot space as that outdoor gathering spillover space that people obviously are wanting. Thank you.
If you could wrap up, thank you very much. Questions for the delegation? Well, I'm going to ask Councillor Hemmond's question, if I may. You've seen the 4 options that have been presented to Council, and we're not restricted to that, but do you have any comment on any of those 4 options? If you don't feel like answering, I don't expect you to. Trust me, it's a challenge for everybody.
Thank you. I don't think anyone really likes any of the options. I think that if I had to choose, I would extend funding through the winter and then stop. But I would give the community absolute assurance that it's ending, because we have more people talking about moving because they just don't see an end in sight. There's a lot of fear that an extension becomes an extension becomes an extension.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Eastmere, please.
Thank you. Thank you for your delegation and for your advocacy and support for the services and trying to balance the needs of keeping the neighborhood safe and welcoming as well. Can you just clarify what parking lot you're referring to?
It's the lot just south of 55 Nichols Street, 55 Victoria. So I'm not sure exactly who owns it or how connected it is, but
Okay, I appreciate that. At the 55 Victoria Road parking lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Armstrong has a question.
Thank you. You mentioned, Ms. Robertson, that you've seen significant more people. Do you ever talk to them and find out if they're local or if they've come here because of the services?
I haven't, no. I've heard other people who said that they have, and they're definitely hearing of people coming from other places to Nanaimo. We hear this all the time. We hear other people saying that that's not accurate or that's not as many as we might think, but I don't really know.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, and same comment. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for representing the voices who I know who are authorizing you to be here and speak on behalf of SICA. So thank you. A quick question amongst the million I have coming. Our report references neighborhood agreements. Could you please tell me your experience with that rolling out with the providers, what that looked like, whether there were regular check-ins, whether it's been measured as to whether it's been effective, et cetera? Just some conversation on that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good question. Just before I answer, I'm just going to note that the South End Community Association, we don't pretend to represent the entire neighborhood. We represent the people who are in contact with us. So you may be hearing very different things from other people in the neighborhood, and that is absolutely valid. So good neighbor agreements, we haven't had a great track record with them, frankly. Some organizations, we feel like they weren't worth the paper they were written on. And in fact, they maybe did the opposite of what we were hoping when we entered into an agreement, because some organizations seem to feel that, oh, we've done the agreement, that's over. To us, it's much more important to have a relationship, to have good communication. They need to keep reaching out to their near neighbors, giving contact information. If it's a 24-hour-a-day operation, neighbors need 24-hour-a-day contact numbers. We think that there needs to be more work in gathering the feedback from neighbors. We hear from a lot of people who no longer phone in. They've given up. Yeah, so we're not even asking anyone these days for a good neighbor agreement. It comes up from some organizations themselves, but it's not a silver bullet for anything in our experience.
Not just a silver bullet, but ineffective, if I hear you correctly.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Not seeing any other questions. The next delegation is Gina Lum. Good morning, and if you can just introduce yourself for the record. Welcome. Nice to see you.
The Mayor and Council, good morning. I'm Gina Lum. I live at 86 Victoria Road, right across the street from 55 at the Hub. And I've been a resident of my home for about almost 20 years. 20 years. Well, I am opposed to the continued support for the Hub and overnight shelter. I have to be. I know everybody's trying to help here. I'm not saying, but this is not the place for this Hub. Well, I have lived in this chaos created by the drugs provided by the outreach pharmacy and the other social service providers since the inception. The drop-in hub has increased all of our problems. And some of them is someone knocking at my door all hours of the night. And I'm by myself. I'm 80 years old, a senior. and I get scared. And cutting down my roses, defecating on my property, needles and garbage left on my property, shingles taken off my building to start fires. I even experienced a man carrying a large bat going up the street along my front steps. And I happened to be outside, but I had to hide behind the rose bush so he won't see me. Involuntary care is needed. And I really do, but those are the ones that are detrimental to themselves and others. And I know everybody's trying to do their best here, but I'm just saying that this facility, that the hub, is not the place. It's not big enough to for people that are needing help. Well, I have the CSO workers. I'm really grateful for their help. They're doing a tremendous job. And they are stressed to the max too. And you know, garbage, there is a lot of garbage. And the city workers, the garbage men, do a great cleanup. You know, they do such a great cleanup. There's not one drop of garbage left. They make sure they pick up everything. And you know what? They're all decent people they have compassion too. But it's a lot of stress. And now, I'm telling you, also moving that doorway from Nickel Street to my street, Victoria Road, is not the answer. Because that road on Victoria Road is just as busy as the one on Nickel Street. And that's not going to help my neighbors, Nob Hill, and the people that are living there. Businesses on Nickel Street have voiced their concern after one season of the hub's entrance on that street. And also think of a tourist that wants to come to visit. Beautiful Nanaimo. It's beautiful. Visitors coming. People that want to move here. What does that look like? We can have a beautiful city, but where is the public safety for us? Revitalization is beautiful, but are there people going to come down because they're scared, fearful? It's all about public safety again. So my neighbors and I have been coming to you for support for over 7 years, and we are opposed to the continuation for the Hub Shelter and other social agencies in this building.
1 minute, Ms. Lum.
Thank you. We need your help to feel safe in our homes too. But I know you guys have big decisions to make. I hope you, when you make those decisions, that our community, our neighborhood, our needs are met too. Thank you for listening. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. It took me a lot of guts to come up here to speak, but now, you know, I'm 80. I got to speak my truth now. I lived in this community for a long time. My parents had the Martin Cafe. My grandfather had Charlie York, the menswear. Well, we left a legacy. How proud we are of the city. We have to continue. So please, when you make your decisions, consider our needs too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship, and
Ms.
through you.
Lum?
Ms. Lum?
Ms. Lum? Councillor Perino has a question for you.
I just, first of all, I want to tell you, I really appreciate your honesty. It's okay to say that it's the wrong location. That's absolutely okay. And all of the speakers so far, and we have many more, are so inspiring because you represent your neighborhood so well. I just wonder, you said that you've been struggling with this for about 7 years. I think you said that. What do you think will happen if the hub is closed? How will that affect your neighborhood? How was it before the hub opened? I just wondered what you've been going through.
I can see kids walking down the street feeling safe.
Okay.
I can feel people that goes to work, feeling safe going down the street.
Okay.
And my neighbors are in Nob Hill, the senior citizens.
Yes.
They used to come up with their walkers. They walk around my neighborhood,
Yes.
enjoying my roses, and and getting to talk to others. But now they're a prisoner in their own place.
So it's really been a substantial difference since the hub opened.
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to know. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Lum, please, sorry.
More questions.
Councillor Armstrong has a question for you as well. She's on screen, sorry.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lum. I appreciate you taking the time. We heard from Mr. Gerard that he noticed a difference between the nighttime and the daytime operators. Have you noticed a difference yourself? And if so, can you expand on it?
Well, I can't say, because sometimes in the daytime is bad too, and the nighttime.
Do you notice any big differences yourself?
Yes, there's some positive things sometime in the daytime. Yes, there's not too much people hanging around, and they're going into the hub for help. But there are times when the hub is closed. There's a lot of loitering, and there's no place, you have 3 there, and the next thing you gather 3 more, and before you know it, there's 12. And they stay there overnight. The CSO, they're good people. They try to move them along. But when there's no one up there, they're all there gathering and sleeping overnight. And there's fights. And there's a lot of abusive language. And I felt really bad just last weekend where this young woman had her dog there. And that dog just sits there all day hot in the heat. And what do they do? I had to go and give the dog some water. And they didn't even think about that because they were just not thinking. But I think the animals we have to think about too, that they're dragging around the streets there and sitting there for hours. So it really is.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next delegation is Anthony Grattel. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor. How are you?
Yourself for the record in 5 minutes, please.
Sure. My name is Anthony Grattel. Good morning, everyone. I am the owner of 94 Victoria Road. I'm Gina Alum's neighbor and have been since 2009. I am based in Vancouver, so I rent the property out, and I've recently had to re-rent it out because the tenants left after 6 years. They couldn't handle it anymore. But I just want to start off by saying that we very much appreciate the work that the CSOs are doing. They've done amazing jobs. Our CMP response has been phenomenal. I really appreciate the feedback and dialogue with city staff, with Christy, and with yourself, Leonard. I think that's an important part of this process. So I've been back for a few months to renovate the house, and what I've seen is just shocking compared to when I left. I raised my son there alone for 6 years, from 2009 till 2014, for 5 years, before we moved to Vancouver for work. And at that point, it was a very manageable and quiet affair. I believe the clinic was supplying methadone, so people would come and get their methadone and they would leave. There was the occasional problem where people would congregate and meet, but that was quickly dispersed. And what I've borne witness to now in the last few months is just absolutely unbelievable. There's people, I wake up early in the mornings, so I'm privy to more of what happens. I think the service providers open at 7 or 7:30 in the morning, and I'm watching people smoke meth on the sidewalk waiting for their services. I'm watching people congregate. The hub has become a center of activity for all of these issues that are taking place. I've spoken extensively with Dalia, who's the owner of the 55 Victoria Road property and the driveway the parking lot. They congregate on his parking lot. He has signs out front. I suspect they're from the College of Pharmacy requirements for security, which state there's no loitering allowed. There's a whole list of policies. None of them are followed. I have to call the pharmacy in order to get anybody to follow that policy, to ask people to move along. And when they do that, when they do ask them to move along, they do move along. When I walked down the street this morning to come to this meeting, there were 12 or 15 people on the sidewalk using drugs in front of AVI, which is a safe supply site. I spoke with the AVI lead yesterday, just to introduce myself and say, hey, just wondering what your policy is on the neighborhood. How do you feel as being part of a good neighbor? And they essentially said that they feel they're helping individuals within the confines of their building, to which my thought is, we have behavior contracts. We have behavior contracts for in here, where conduct is supposed to be in a certain way. If abusive language is used in these service provider facilities, they have to leave. There's an accountability. Suddenly, when they leave the building, there's zero accountability, and they congregate, and there's no service agreement with them for that. I don't quite understand why, and I haven't looked at the minutiae of the service agreements between the city of Nanaimo and the service providers, but there doesn't seem to be nothing being enforced to ensure that the neighborhood doesn't suffer. And the neighborhood is suffering a lot. And it needs to change. I think as far as I support everything that everybody has said previously, with the exception of the bit about the parking lot, which I think would be an absolute disaster. There was an opening in the gate at 55 Nickel Road, at Nickel Street.
1 minute.
Thank you. And that was a throughway for people to congregate, so that's been closed off. That's made things a little bit better, but we still have a massive congregation problem because of the hub, because people are using these services there. So, speaking to the options, it seems to me that the best thing to help revitalize downtown and to continue forward is to have the funding through until winter, have behavior contracts in place with the people using the services that once they've accessed and before they've accessed the facilities, they're not allowed to loiter outside, otherwise the services are suspended, the same as exists inside the building. Which may help with some of the loitering problem. But I mean, I was attacked last week when I asked somebody to move off of my property. And the police are there on a fairly regular basis, as is CSO.
If you could wrap up, please.
Yes, of course. So I think the situation is well out of control. And centralizing services with the number of clinics that are there is just the wrong move in the short term and the long term. I think the answer is, and I think Christy would, as she said, they're experiencing difficult finding leases because nobody wants to do it. The answer is to buy land and/or properties and start involuntary treatment pilot projects.
Thank you. Sorry, I've got to be fair to everybody, and
yes,
30 seconds passed. I'm sorry, is Councillor Armstrong's little hand up? I can't see in the light. No? Mr. Gradle, much appreciate the presentation. Councillor Thorpe, thank you.
There we go.
Councillor Thorpe, go ahead.
Yes, I hit the right button. Thank you very much, Your Worship. I don't have any questions at this point, and I really just wanted to apologize to Council and the delegations that due to an important prior commitment out of town, I have to leave this meeting almost immediately. I just wanted to say that I've been extremely impressed with all of the delegations to this point, and I want to thank them all for showing up and expressing their honest views very eloquently. This is a tremendously difficult conversation and a topic, and we all want to do the right thing, but there is no obvious, easy solution. My personal view is that right now what is happening on Victoria and Nickel, and this is no reflection on service providers, but the situation is untenable, it's embarrassing, and it's unacceptable. Something has to change. So again, my apologies that I do have to leave, and my thank you to everybody who is taking part in this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thorpe. Mr. Gradle, for your time. Appreciate it this morning. Thank you. The next delegation is Ruth Taylor. Ms. Taylor, good morning, and I think you know the drill, 5 minutes. I'll let you know in a minute. If you can introduce yourself for the record, please. Thank you.
All of a sudden, I feel awkward. Okay, so my name is Ruth Taylor. I live in the South End. I don't know what's going on. I've got the same problem that that Sydney had. So I live in the South End, and I'm heavily involved in as many community groups as I can be involved, while also working full-time and raising my kids. And thank you. And I have been at the Public Safety Committee meetings that have been repeatedly mentioned here, because I'm a member at large on the Public Safety Committee. And there's so much to unpack here, but what I had statements that I wanted to make, but then I sat here and listened to the operators. And I listened to the Hub presentation of the report. And so I've thrown out all my notes, and I'm just gonna speak from the heart here. The operators of the Hub and the shelter have spoke about their relationship first ethos. And yet I have not seen a relationship built with the community from these operators. There has been 200 meters around the Hub where there has been a little handout handed out that said a phone number will be provided, dedicated phone number for people. That phone number, from at least 2 people I know who live within that radius, they never followed up with a phone number. How is that relationship first? How's that relationship building? When I hear these folks talking about the community and how we want to help the community, your clients and guests are not this community. They are a small part of this community, a highly dysfunctional, antisocial at times part of this community. And I think about our families, and the most dysfunctional families exist when you completely accommodate the most impactful, violent, dysfunctional person in a community, in a family. And that's what we're doing in our community. It's a macrocosm of that. Oh, Uncle Joe's coming to Christmas, he's gonna get drunk and flip out. Let's all accommodate this person. Like, I'm not speaking with a lot of grace right now. It is extremely difficult for me to live in the neighborhood where you cannot walk down a sidewalk, and now you can't walk down another sidewalk, where you have to question, how are you going to drive home? What's the least likely chance of you to kill somebody in your vehicle? To hear people say, well, you live in this neighborhood, what do you expect? Or to hear concern from coworkers like, ooh, you must be, well, your neighborhood's getting really bad. Your neighborhood's really bad. It's one concentration, one mega service location that is so visible to everyone driving through. And I also want to say that aside from it being completely clear that the community is not being considered by the operators, in my opinion, I also have to say that I'm very concerned with the way that I've heard people who work for the city at the Public Safety Committee meeting say that there is no way that this service will ever be considered a nuisance property. Where are the consequences? Where's the motivation to actually run it better, other than the magical thinking of, well, if you keep funding us, we'll run it better? It's been ongoing for 6 months, and all of this was predictable. People are gonna use drugs that make them immovable. Well, yeah, the sidewalk's full of people using drugs who are immovable. I mean, you have a strip of sidewalk 3 feet wide, and you have a highway.
1 minute, Ms. Taylor.
Right? Who could have predicted that that would have caused issues? Anyone could have predicted that. The other issue is this good neighbor agreement. In the service agreement, it says a good neighbor agreement will be provided, developed between the operators and the city. Now, 6 months later, I'm hearing our social planner say, we're working on a good neighbor agreement. 6 months later? That's not acceptable. And it shows that there is no motivation to be a good neighbor, and there never was. It's 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 10:30 on a sunny work day, and you have 7 delegations coming. Imagine if this was at a city council meeting. People are gonna lose their livelihoods, they're gonna lose our homes. If we don't lose our sanity, kids can't use their yards, I can't walk to work. You're playing Pac-Man, trying to move around people, walking into oncoming traffic. This is not acceptable.
If you could wrap up, thank you very much. Councillor Armstrong and then Councillor Brino have questions for you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Taylor. I know that you lived on the downtown east side for many years. Can you explain the differences in what you're seeing now as to what you've seen previous?
I would say that this is just a total degradation of our neighborhood. It has been actively compared to the downtown east side, not just by myself, but by family and friends who have come to Nanaimo and they haven't been here for a year. It's a certain level of acceptance of some of the most egregious behaviors that it's okay in this neighborhood. Well, it's just Nickel Street. Oh, it's just Hastings. Oh, it's just Pandora. This is how these systems become so entrenched and these areas become so ghettoized that it's intractable. You cannot be rescued. Because if money and well-meaning service providers could solve that problem, then the downtown east side would look and feel very different because billions of dollars go there. Concentrating all the services and allowing there to be bylaws violated, like the obstructions of the sidewalks, allowing there to be egregious traffic safety issues in one area, that is all part and parcel of ghettoizing and creating a downtown east side. So I don't know if I answered your question correctly, but that was what you were looking for. But again, in terms of the predictability of what the outcome will be for this, we will have our very own downtown east side. It's just, we're watching it unfold right now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brino?
Thank you, Your Worship. And just a quick comment first. You said it right at the beginning. You said, I'm not speaking with grace. I'm like, you are absolutely speaking with grace. And I want you to know, because I know you have your children here, that you are an inspiration to your children standing up for your community. So thank you for that. Councillor Hemmons brought up the questions with our first delegations. What is it that you want to see absolutely? Do you want to see the doors closed right away? Do you want to see it go through the winter? What just as clearly as you can say, what is it that you want to see?
What I want to see is Mayor and Council be very clear that what is currently happening is unacceptable.
Okay.
And I also want there to be a recognition that when you have the Director of Public Safety and the social planner and everything working as partners with these operators, that's cutting out the actual community that already resided there.
Good point.
You know what I'm saying? Like, we are the community.
Yep.
And if we didn't sign up as a delegation, who would be talking to us? It's pushing water uphill to be heard. And that's not right.
Okay.
I would like to see this closed as soon as possible.
Okay.
Before it gets cold. Okay. And, you know, when the OPS was first developed and opened in December of 2022, I pulled up the article, and Sheila Malcolmson did the ribbon cutting, and there were supposed to be all kinds of wraparound services. There were supposed to be up to 30 healthcare professionals working there.
It's not there.
You know, maybe we need to move it to an OPS. The other thing is, one of the main reasons why people are sitting along that sidewalk on Nickel is because they're using drugs. They're openly smoking their globe pipes, like you can see them, along a sign, beside a sign that says no drugs, no loitering. So maybe it does need to be near an OPS. I don't know. And the point is, I'm not getting paid to be here. I could be at the beach with my children behind me, but I'm here. And I've come up with so many solutions. I propose moving the door at the public safety meeting. It's disappointing that myself, as just a citizen who joins all these committees on my ample free time, is coming up with solutions, like real concrete solutions. When I sit there and I look at $750,000, you know, in salary of people at this public safety meeting, like, it's not a matter of people not being smart enough. It's not a matter of people not having the ideas. It's that they don't care about our community. That's what we feel. We don't matter. The South End doesn't matter. When I lived in the downtown east side, I knew I didn't matter when I was waiting for the bus at Maiden Hastings to go to high school. And that's what you're putting my kids through. And all these kids who can't use their yard. And it's not right. It's not right, because I pay property taxes like everyone else. And I can't even use my sidewalks.
Thank you for your honesty. I appreciate that.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any further questions. Appreciate your presentation this morning. The next delegation is Vanessa Hitchens-Decker. Good morning. If you can introduce yourself for the record, 5 minutes, and I'll let you know when you have a minute left.
Hi there, I'm Vanessa Hitchens-Decker. I represent sort of the Nob Hill community. I'm not really prepared for this, and it's not the first time I've spoken here. Between Risebridge and this new hub, Risebridge is no longer an issue at this moment, but our neighborhood has taken a beating. The hub is, while it's a little bit less impactful than Risebridge was, for us personally, it's getting worse and worse every day. Last night, our neighbors and I called the RCMP, the CPOs, 3 times in the evening. One was because my neighbor saw a guy that looked like he was carrying a gun, fighting with a woman in our street. The other one was a group of people openly smoking drugs, and like one guy looked dead at the end of my roundabout, or not the end of my dead-end street there, where they like to congregate. And it's been a daily issue, and I walked over there, myself, and I was gonna talk about the fence, but I'll just say it right now because I don't wanna make another speech, but you guys recognize how dangerous this is. I'm dealing with this on my own. I'm a single mom with a daughter. Like, I had to quit my job up in Courtney when Risebridge was open because I couldn't let my daughter walk to school because there was literally dead bodies in my neighborhood. We can't impose this on neighborhoods. I don't wish this on any neighborhood. I know the South End is constantly used as a place where all these services can be put, and all that happens is we create a ghetto, and we create a downtown east side or a Pandora Street, and I've been so emotional listening to all my neighbors because we're all living this nightmare. I'm not impacted as badly as Les and the lady that spoke, and I really, really appreciate her speaking about the animals because I work in rescue, and it's heartbreaking to me. It literally causes PTSD for me to see these poor dogs being dragged around. That's a different topic. But anyways, I don't want my daughter growing up like this. I recognize these people need somewhere to be, but they can't be in any neighborhood. Not just my neighborhood, any neighborhood. We have a right to our sanity. We have a right to our peace. And like Ruth said, we're all catering to the person with the most problems, and that's not healthy. And it's not, I don't know what the solution is. I think a solution would be to find some place maybe out of the city or in an industrial area where it's not neighborhoods being impacted. And bring the services to the people, not have the services all in one place where they all come to downtown. And we have a beautiful downtown. A friend of mine and I are trying to start a business doing tours of downtown, like historical tours, and it's a challenge. And we have a beautiful downtown. We have so much potential, and what you guys have done with the downtown area, or all the flowers and stuff, it's gorgeous, but it's not safe. So anyways, I won't talk for 5 minutes, but I just want to, please, we're begging you to do something different.
Thank you. I'm not seeing questions. Let me ask Councillor Hemmons an original question. You were here and saw the 4 options listed. Do any of them have appeal to you?
Well, me personally, I would like to, it's difficult because you don't want to be the jerk that says it needs to close, but we are paying for this dearly, daily, and it's I don't know. There must be some warehouse or some place that's not in a neighborhood that can be open for the winter where all the services come to them. And if the province doesn't like it, then maybe we stand up with all the other municipalities and say, you know what, we've had enough. We're not doing it your way anymore. We have to think of our citizens.
Please, 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 please. Not seeing, Councillor Eastmere, please, one more.
Thank you. Because you live in the area with Nob Hill Park, can I just ask what you've noticed as far as activity in the park, and if there's been a change in the condition of that park since the drop-in hub opened?
Oh, absolutely. We live in constant fear of that park, which is the oldest park in Nanaimo with beautiful old trees, constant fear of it going up in flames. I see fire remnants all the time, and the amount of garbage there. I know the CSO do a wonderful job. They really do, but nobody can keep up with this. And there are new people all the time. I don't believe it. There's new people. I talk to people. They're not all from here.
because I know issues with that park have been long-standing. You know, when I first moved into that neighborhood 13 years ago, people told me don't go into Nob Hill Park, and then it sort of got better for a while. But you're saying that since this winter, when the drop-in hub,
Yeah, and there's also a lot of positive in the park. There's a playground. We have 3 daycares in the immediate area, not to mention the seniors' homes all around that park. Everybody's a prisoner in their own home. And just to say, oh, that park's always been a problem, it shouldn't be a problem. It shouldn't be. It is the oldest, most beautiful park. Like, it's a beautiful park, and it should be valued.
it is a gem. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your attendance this morning.
Thank you.
And the last delegation is Jean Fox. Ms. Fox, good morning. If you'd introduce yourself for the record in 5 minutes, and I'll let you know when you have a minute left, please.
I'm Jean Fox, and I live at 67 Robart Street, 35 feet from...
Come closer to the mic, please.
Sorry. I'm nervous. I live, pardon? Our home has been in our family for over 61 years. I live 35 feet off the park. We were robbed while we slept one night. My husband's workshop is attached to the house, but you can't get in the house through it. And we were sleeping, we didn't hear them, and they stole all his woodworking tools. But we got them back because of the wonderful bylaws people that helped us and seen them with his tools in carts down in front of the hub. So we got them back with the help of bylaws. And thank you, bylaws, they do good work. You know, your kids can't, there's daycares, like she said, in the park, and yet I witnessed in the play area when I was walking the dog, these people were doing drugs on the picnic table. You know, and then the next time I'm walking by there's a family with their kids around the picnic table eating, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, if they only knew somebody the day before was doing drugs right there. There is human, and they bring dogs into the park and they don't pick up. You know, and there's human feces in the park. They pull their pants down in front of our window that looks into the park and relieve themselves. They walk around with their pants hanging down and their bums hanging out. I have 3 granddaughters. When they were little, the first one, I used to take her around the park and lift her from rock to rock to rock because she just loved to think she was jumping. But they can't go to the park. They're, like, the oldest one is 13 now anyways. But they can't go over to the park because what's going on over there. There's people laying underneath the huge big oak tree out from taking drugs. They give them food, they throw it around. My husband went over and spoke to the bylaws officers yesterday, and today thanked them again because they showed up with a bunch of them, and they cleaned the park. Because he went over and complained, this is ridiculous, the way they treat this park. So, you know, why should we have to give up our home for the druggies that have done this to themselves? They decided to start taking drugs and ruined their brains, and there's no curing them once they get into the drugs, because it destroys their brain and your brain does not regrow. And you can tell because when they start standing for hours with their head on the ground, swinging, you know that their head isn't right. I feel sorry, you know, I look out and sometimes I see young kids and I think, oh my God, was somebody's child, somebody's grandchild, but they chose that life. And you just hope, if you want to quit, my sister, her daughter got into drugs in Vancouver. She said, come home. If you're going to quit, you can live here and we'll get you help. That kid wanted to quit. She came home, but she said, if you start taking drugs, you're out of this place and you're not coming back. This is one chance only. She gave her tough love. That girl has been free of drugs for years now and has 2 children of her own. But they need tough love, this handing out and saying, oh, I worked in nursing. I had nurses that said, oh, but something tragic happened to them, and that's why they got this, and we got to help them. No, they chose that lifestyle, and why should we suffer because of their choice? They get free food, and if they don't want it, they just throw it. My husband is 82, he's out there picking up garbage every day.
If you could wrap up, please.
Yeah, so, I'm thankful to the bylaws people. And you can check, I phone the city all the time. So,
Thank
we're
you.
just getting frustrated.
We hear the frustration, believe me. If no one else is going to ask it, you saw the 4 options on the screen, and that's not the only thing that council could or couldn't do necessarily. Do you have any comment on those options? In terms of carrying on, shutting down, carrying on through the winter?
It needs to shut down. That's not the place for it. We've been coming down in our vehicle down Victoria and have them walk right out in front of you. They just step off the sidewalk. There's going to be a tragedy there. And some poor person in the car is going to get blamed for the drug person that stepped in front of them. So, and why should my neighbor live in fear in her home? In our same neighborhood, right? I walk around there and the streets are filthy. And I got chased by a drug person one time out walking on Kennedy Street. He come at me and I had to run across the other side. So, and it's kind of put me off walking. And these people come from other communities. They're not all from here.
Thank you. I appreciate your response to my question, and I appreciate you taking the time to come this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's the last of the delegations. We had a scheduled break at 10:30. I'm going to suggest we reconvene at 10:50, please. No later. Thank you.
Around every corner and under every corner, the city has assets, infrastructure that quietly adds convenience to our day-to-day living. From the pipes that carry our water and wastewater, to the roads that we walk, cycle, and drive on, to the amazing parks facilities that keep us active. We depend on this infrastructure without really thinking about its upkeep. That is, until something goes wrong. In April 2020, the water main that runs beneath Bowen Road broke and burst in a big way.
I don't think there's anything we depend upon in this community more than our water supply. We have dams, we have a reservoir, we have a water treatment plant, We have big water trunk mains and distribution mains, fire hydrants, and all kinds of other pieces of infrastructure totaling $1.5 billion that all bring water to our 100,000 residents. We have to be really careful to plan and make sure that that system is robust and resilient so that nobody's ever without water.
The water main on Bowen Road was quickly repaired, and recognizing that the entire water main was at risk, a plan was quickly moved forward to replace it with the Midtown water supply, a new seismically safe water main built for future growth and expected to last for nearly a century. A parallel and backup water main has also been installed and can be used whenever the main line needs repairs.
When we plan to replace our assets, our underground infrastructure, our facilities, all of those sorts of things, we want to make sure we're future-proof as possible. We're really looking out for the long-term best interest of the community. And so we want to make sure that the infrastructure is resilient, it's hardened, and it has sufficient capacity for growth, for unpredictable events such as earthquakes or wildfires. And we want to make sure that we're protecting the environment as much as possible.
Making smart, modern improvements and focusing on sustainability applies to all of the city's asset management planning, regardless of a project scale.
As our infrastructure ages and it becomes time to replace it, because that's really part of the asset management life cycle, we always strive to replace with newer technology, more effective, more efficient fixtures, or even enhancing and taking advantage of newer technology. So a few examples would be LED streetlights, replacing the old high-pressure sodium, very environmentally invasive, with LED, much more focused and much less cost of electricity. Another example would be the boilers in our pools. We're getting away from the intensive GHG gas boilers and shifting more and more to electric, and still using the old ones as backup. Another great example that we'd like to point to, it's been really relatively under the radar for the last 10 years, is at our #1 reservoir, we actually, as we fill the reservoir, generate electricity and sell that back to the grid to the tune of about $100,000 a year.
Even with the city's best planning, the unpredictable can happen, such as the water main break on Bowen Road. Planning for the unexpected is one more reason why the city maintains an asset management fund. With $4.8 billion in infrastructure, planning and budgeting for the future is crucial to keep Nanaimo healthy.
So a huge part of planning ahead involves determining how much money is needed to fund the replacement of assets, and the city uses long-term planning to do that.
The city has 3 asset management funds that help with long-term infrastructure planning. One for water, one for sewer, and a general asset management fund.
So the contributions to the 3 asset management reserve funds help to smooth out the impact on property taxes and user fee increases when replacement is needed.
You know, for the last 10 or 12 years, Nanaimo's council has been really supportive in annual contributions and increasing approximately 1% of taxes every year dedicated to asset management to ensure that our funding to replace our old assets remains sustainable.
As Nanaimo is one of the fastest growing cities in BC, the demand on our infrastructure is growing right along with it. This makes long-term planning more important now than ever.
Without that contribution to asset management reserves, we wouldn't be able to ensure that the services Nanaimo continues to rely on and appreciate and enjoy would be able to be sustained.
Starting up a short-term rental in the city of Nanaimo? From marketing to pricing to your business platform, there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. One piece that you won't want to miss is your short-term rental business license. Puzzled? We're here to help. A short-term rental is the rental of a living space for a period of less than 30 days back to back. By following the guidelines of the Short-Term Rental Operators Guidebook, short-term rental operators may qualify for a business license without hurting the long-term rental market in Nanaimo. It's also about being a great neighbor. By getting a short-term rental business license, it's like saying, hey, I promise that my guests will have a dedicated space to park in and that they won't be too noisy. This is, after all, a very respectable establishment. To learn more about the City of Nanaimo's short-term rental guidelines, or if you need a hand getting started with your business license application, connect with us. We're here to help.
Terminal Avenue is the gateway to downtown Nanaimo, and whether you're arriving from the north or the south, it's the first impression of Nanaimo's downtown. While the first impression isn't anything to celebrate yet, positive change is underway, growing from the efforts of grassroots organizations and the vision of Nanaimo's community. A better Terminal Avenue gateway is being created. In the early coal mining days, Terminal Avenue wasn't a roadway. In fact, it wasn't even land. It was a tidal inlet and regularly filled with ocean water. Throughout the coal mining days, the inlet was a depository for coal mining tailings. As time passed, the inlet vanished and new land formed. Through the 20th century, Nanaimo continued to grow, and along with it, the city's transportation needs. The corridor of new land became Terminal Avenue and a part of the Trans-Canada Highway, routing travelers through the heart of Nanaimo's downtown. Over time, more and more people came, more cars filled the streets, and we ended up with the highway-oriented Terminal Avenue that we see today. With the creation of the Nanaimo Parkway in the 1990s, a highway that bypassed the city, Terminal Avenue no longer needed to be just an auto-oriented streetscape meant to move cars quickly through the city, and new potential for the area came to light. In 2016, the Downtown Nanaimo Business Improvement Association, together with the city and the Ministry of Transportation, undertook Terminal Nickel Reimagined, a process that invited the community to help create a toolbox of ideas to improve the streetscape. Now those tools are being put to work, and that work began beneath the Bastion Street Bridge when it was given seismic upgrades. New art integrates with the bridge supports and adds a moment of color to the streetscape. Another step comes with the construction of a beautified streetscape and park spaces along Terminal Avenue between Esplanade and Commercial Street. Following that, a big stride forward will come with a new downtown transit exchange on Terminal Avenue, which will expand multimodal connectivity in the heart of downtown. And we're poised for a giant leap when Terminal Avenue streetscape upgrades are extended through downtown all the way to Stewart Avenue. Back in 2015, residents were asked to share their greatest fear for the future of Terminal Avenue. That fear? Nothing will change, and the challenge of achieving an active and attractive gateway to Nanaimo is insurmountable. Those fears were heard, and the challenge accepted. Today we're reimagining Terminal Avenue as a walkable, green, and beautiful downtown street.
And I'm Wish Cycling.
Wish, I have to say, I'm really loving your t-shirt.
Well, I do love recycling.
Stop it, you're gonna make me blush.
Absolutely. Wait, no, not you recycling. I heart recycling. I like you, but I love the act of recycling. I put everything in the blue cart.
I don't know if you understand the blue cart completely. Have you ever heard of contamination?
Oh yeah, that's when your Brussels sprouts touch your mashed potatoes.
No, that's brumotactylophobia.
You lost me.
Recycling contamination happens when things that can't be recycled end up in your blue cart.
Oh, like Brussels sprouts.
No, I'm talking about recyclables, like packing foam or glass or soft plastics. Things that can't be sorted at the depot. If these things end up in the truck on pickup day, then it contaminates the whole load, and then the whole load is trash.
Oh, I don't heart trash.
Exactly. That's what wish cycling actually is. It's putting something in your blue cart and then just expecting that someone's there on the other end to sort it. The truth is, our sorting process doesn't allow for wish cycling.
What was that?
Sounds of the machines grinding to a halt at the recycling depot. If soft plastics get into the sorting belts, then the entire process comes to a halt.
Soft plastics can do that?
Sure can. That's why your blue card is only for packaging and paper products.
Oh, I see. PPP.
Exactly. You still love recycling?
I sure do. I heart recycling.
That's my name.
This is a City of Nanaimo storm drain. This is also a City of Nanaimo storm drain. The only thing that goes in this is rainwater. Anything other than rainwater ends up into the ocean, which ultimately affects the marine life. There's many different styles of catch basins. These are just two, but they both collect rainwater. One has a fish stamped on it. That's telling me that it's unprocessed and it goes directly to an environmentally sensitive area. This is the outfall, so anything that you put in that catch basin is ultimately going to end up into the ocean. If you have any questions about where to take your unwanted wasted products, such as paint products and petroleum products, you can contact the City of Nanaimo at 758-5222. You can also go onto our website. You can also download the Nanaimo Recycles app. Please.
Council, it's time for questions and discussion on the matter before us. Councillor Himmons, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll start, and then you can cut me off. So I think I want to begin by just giving a little bit of background in my understanding of why we are here today and how we got here, and that's that previously with the United Way Reaching Home funding, and forgive me if I get this wrong, but if the gist is correct, let's go with it. The Community Advisory Board provided funding for not small, but we did a food program here, we did a shelter bit here. We were kind of like putting funding everywhere on this problem. I want to say about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when I was on the Health and Housing Task Force, there was this real drive to say, we don't have a daytime drop-in center, and we're doing this piecemeal funding, so what if we pooled our funding? That's actually what happened here, and the staff recommendation was to go find 2 sites, of which we only found 1. But I'm saying this to acknowledge that the concept is good. The concept of us pooling funding between the feds and the city to try to tackle this problem holistically is a good one. The problem we're facing is that the population that we can serve with that funding is this big, but the problem is this big. So it's in those margins that we're really stuck. I'll start with, I'm not finding myself convinced of our ability to find another location. And keeping the shelter open seems to remain contingent upon that ability to go do that. So my question for staff is, what about another search will be different? What other outcomes can we anticipate from another search 6 months down the road, when in our report we say we did an exhaustive search and we only found 1 location? And if in the comment from staff, if I could also have some reflection on sites outside, not necessarily out of city bounds, but outside of neighborhoods, where we looked, what the drawbacks and positives are of that. Thank you.
Ms. Wood, please.
Through your worship, to Councillor Hammonds, thank you for the question. You know, to be frank, you know, there will be no new approach that we would take. We would be reviewing all the leasable spaces like we did before. There could be new spaces that pop up. We've continued our search and continue to look. And of course, many of the spaces that we think would be more appropriate are for sale, not for lease. And they're found throughout the city. As far as like looking at different locations, we're limited to what is available. And where leases are available, and that typically tends to be in the south part of the city, so mid to south. That's kind of what we've noticed. And I think on the flip side, the other challenge is this, and this is where kind of, I guess, the resourcing comes into, is that the extreme weather response that we did over the winter is a perfect example of this. So we had an extreme weather shelter up at Beban Park Complex, which some would consider more middle part of the city. And we had about 2 or 3 on an average night
from that area who are experiencing homelessness, but we had to ship everybody from downtown to that building. So the challenge is always trying to find where we put the location, but how are people going to be accessing that service? How are they going to get there? And the logistics of trying to put folks on transit was a challenge. It was doable for sure in an extreme weather response emergency where people's life were threatened. But to do that on a day-to-day basis would be a lot of money.
Thank you. Oh, there's other people on the list. I'll just keep my list going and move on. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Armstrong, then Eastmere, Gesselbrock, and Prino. Councillor Armstrong, please.
Thank you. I'm just going to make some general points. I think something this council has to think about is the impact this is having on the community. I don't think any one of us would want to have to live the way they're living, especially those of us that have children. You know, I go back to my policing days when we first started putting in supportive housing here in 2010 and on. The big difference was the selection criteria. We didn't have the same issues because the selection criteria was much better. There was much better supports, wraparound supports. We're not seeing that now, and I think it's a big issue. I also think the more that municipalities put on these Band-Aid solutions, it's going to keep the problem growing and growing because there's no impetus for the government to start investing in treatment. And as you've been saying for years, Your Worship, secure complex care. For me, I do have to leave also at 12. So for me on this one, I'm prepared to go. I'd like to close it now, but I think we should wait till the summer. So I'd be looking at option 2. And just for me, I just think the more we throw money at this, the bigger the problem's going to grow until we start finding a better solution with the province. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Eastmere.
Thank you. I have a question through to staff. How have other cities achieved the building of purpose-built drop-in and resource centers, and how can we duplicate that?
Through Your Worship. I think I've mentioned before at the council, we've had the opportunity to go and take a look at some other models. I've now been over to Vancouver twice, once last fall, but also just recently in the last few weeks with some of the hub service providers to take a look at their models, learn from best practices. And what's happening for Vancouver, of course, a much bigger city than we are with much more access to resources, but they do have purpose-built community centers that are offering these types of services. They're staffed with City of Vancouver staff, so it's a high operational cost. However, they do have shared funding models. So one of the centers that we did go to was the Evelyn Cellar Place, and that's in the downtown east side. BC Housing is providing daytime service funding for that site as well, and is matching funding with the City of Vancouver, and as well as the health authorities involved in there. So they have shower, they have laundry, they have meals. At night they offer weather beds, and then above they have supportive housing. So that's a model that has that shared funding. The other 2 models were more dispersed into other parts of the community. One was in Yaletown. So, you know, they had services for people who were experiencing homelessness, but they also had services for people who were newcomers. So different models. And I'm just going to say this, and I said it before in my presentation, but so many communities are having this issue because nobody is responsible for this type of service, this basic needs service, this daytime service. Most of the shelters that are currently being funded, new shelters that are coming on, everybody has to leave by 7 or 8 a.m. in the morning. There's nowhere for folks to go during the day. And there is no agency or level of government that's responsible for providing that service. And so that's like looking at washrooms and, you know, showers. And sometimes it tends to default on the local municipality that's providing that. So it's, Kamloops is facing it, Kelowna, West Kelowna, like we all have these conversations on a quarterly basis to find out what other folks are doing. So it's a challenge elsewhere. Each community has a different model. Maybe they have a nonprofit who's getting like private donations. Sometimes they have churches involved. It just looks different in every community. But we have seen BC Housing come to the table to fund some of those services, and in other communities they're not. So it's just a totally different mix of what's happening. With City of Vancouver, they of course have purpose-built buildings, but you know, in Kamloops, they leased a spot. They had to close their daytime service. So I know West Kelowna tried to get one up and running they got a lot of pushback from the neighborhood, so they weren't able to get it up and running, even though the space was going to be provided for free by a church. So it's all of, you know, the same struggles we're facing here.
How much funding for, like, can you give me an example, like from the first one in Vancouver where there's like a purpose-built location that has partners involved? Like, how much would it take for us to meaningfully start that?
Through your worship, I'm hesitant to answer that question because I think it's really dependent on a lot of things. I do know that for one of the centers, the City of Vancouver, for their own city staff, has an operational budget of over $1 million just for one site. They're open 365 days, so we're talking a lot of funds.
I mean, over $1 million makes sense to me because that's what it's costing to run this location, so that seems reasonable. And when you say, you know, no one's responsible, like the province is responsible, and we do need to be continuing to advocate for them to step up for this role, because they're responsible for housing and shelter, and this is a direct result of a lack of housing and shelter. So that's where that gap is, and like, I have to wonder, like, where is BC Housing today in this conversation, and what is our plan to like meaningfully follow up with our MLAs in a concrete way to get the support that we need? Because when it comes to the Minister of Housing, our council sent a letter to the minister requesting that he talk to us about funding for a permanent drop-in hub, which he'd indicated in the media he'd be open to having that conversation. And he came back with a letter saying that he's not available to talk about that. But I can't accept that answer, because that is his job, and our MLAs need to be helping us to send the word up the chain about how dire the situation is and the kind of supports we actually need to get a location that works. And no matter where you put it, it's going to be in a neighborhood, because people equals neighborhood, and these are our people and they're part of our community. So really, no matter where you put it, it's going to be in a neighborhood. And if you only have one drop-in hub, of course it's going to look like a concentration of services. But I really am interested in building a purpose-built location that actually has all of the services that are required, like proper showers and bathrooms and things like that. So I'm grateful for the work that the city's done on this, and that the funding partners like United Way have stepped in to help. And I know that when this location was chosen, none of us were happy with it. Like, certainly my immediate reaction was, that's a horrible location. But we didn't have any other location, and it was dire at that point because we were needing the winter shelter space. But I think immediately we were all like, we need to find another location for it, and we simply haven't been able to find that. And so I think that means that we're going to have to step up and identify as a council where proper locations are, and whether we need to buy a building or build something, and we need to be working hand in hand with the province on that. So I look forward to talking more with the ministers about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gesselbrock, and then Councillor Perino.
Thanks, Mayor. Through you, first, just thanks for the community members that came out and spoke. I think, when we put in services like this, there's been clearly an increase in disorder, and it takes its toll. I live in the South End, and in a bit more of a periphery, but walking downtown along the railroad tracks and seeing people in complete disarray with their pants down or passed out, with my 2-year-old son, it's like, what do you say? And this is kind of the community that issues that we're faced with, and it is really tough to see, and especially when you're right beside the hub and things like that, that's difficult, and it's not ideal. And I also really want to say a really big thank you to our staff and the service providers. It's thankless operating in this environment. There's no winning. Everybody's totally underpaid. We're operating in a completely resource scarce environment where the money being put towards actually dealing with the scale of the problem is a fraction of what's needed, and it's really sad. And yeah, it's sitting up here and just feeling the stress of everybody. Everybody's stressed and frustrated, scared, and it's a large toll. definitely going to need to go for a big walk after this and do some breathing, because it's a lot to sort through. But I want to say, from what I'm seeing in Nanaimo's response compared to even 3, 4, or 5 years ago, there's a lot greater coordination between everybody and collaboration, and I think we really need to keep feeding that and have this team response, because there's no other way. It'll only be worse without that. And then specifically with the hub, you know, it felt like a big effort to get just $1 million to provide the services, and even try to find like one location in Nanaimo to do it, because, you know, when people don't have access to these things, there is a greater level of desperation, and you start seeing weird things at the emergency room, and the emergency room gets all plugged up because people have got like open sores and just basic things aren't being dealt with, and the spill out is everywhere, and it's whack-a-mole. And then you try to like help that situation, and you put in a service like the hub, and there's a lot of success in terms of moving people, getting them resources, and them actually getting them off the street into housing. But then you don't have enough housing and you're building out that. So I think we do really, it's important to listen to the community and about the level of stress and pressure the current situation is, and we need to promptly find the next step and solution for that. And so I think relocating is an important move, and we have options for that. I do think we need a big reality check on the type of resources that this is going to take. People knew, you know, $1 million and leasing, trying to find a lease site is a recipe for having, there is going to be that, we're going to come into that issue. And the reality of the fact, if we want to do this properly, it'll probably take 3 sites. We'll probably have to buy the sites, so you're looking at, you know, at least $1 million each for the capital to just buy the site. If it's got a house, you know, building that you could use on it, probably even more. And then it's about $1 million to $1.5 million to run it. That's a large expense. We're contemplating looking at a South End rec center. We're looking at some other large facilities. When I think about what is the biggest issue in Nanaimo, what's making people feel unsafe, what is our number one issue? It's dealing with the social disorder and trying to provide some level of basic servicing to people to help them get off the streets and not get into a worse state where we're seeing increased incidences of violence and medical conditions that plug up all the other systems. And so I support either recommendation number 1 or 2. I don't want to lose the small amount of funding that we do have, because we are showing with BC Housing and other agencies that this collaborative model is working, getting people out and reducing the level of desperation. But at the same time, it's not enough where we're not addressing a really critical factor is the disorder that can be surrounded these sites. And I think having a more dispersed model with multiple locations, maybe some form of rotation, and then actually having the staffing capacities and paying the staff at an adequate level. You know, I feel for the folks that are working the night shift. Imagine working the night shift in a shelter with people that are completely unhinged, on drugs, and in a state where totally unpredictable. Who would like that job? And then saying that they need to go outside and be picking up garbage and that, like finding an individual to work that sort of condition in the first place is a miracle. So I think I appreciate the tone that people spoke here tonight, because it's very difficult, and I think we have to really work together and find a solution. And I would say to the community, you've definitely been heard, and there is an urgency to find a solution to this. And I think that we need to look at the resourcing that we're putting towards this. So I support option number 1 and 2, and I think that I would like to see some recommendations from staff and work to like what are properties that we could purchase, and what is a realistic number if we're going to provide a system that is not going to concentrate services and create disorder, but provide the basic needs for people and the servicing to actually get them into housing and stabilize them, which is the ultimate goal. What would that actual number be, so that when I speak to the minister, or the mayor speaks to the ministers, or anybody service provider speaks to any provincial representative, this is the reality check of what it's going to cost. Anything else is going to be a Band-Aid, and we're going to be swirling in frustration in our communities and creating more disharmony if we don't actually take the
Councillor
reality.
Gasselbrook, we do have limits on
Okay, thank you.
council member gets to.
So that's my piece.
Thank you. Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have a question, but just a couple of quick comments. I wish that Premier Eby could be in this room to hear what has been said, because he needs to know, and I think he does hear, but when you hear the compelling comments of the delegations today, it is it's inspiring to know how people want to support their neighborhoods, and so I want to say that first off. I also want to say, you know, Premier Eby should see the incredible work of our Christy Wood and what she's been doing to keep this work going. The CSOs, the police, the bylaw enforcement, it does not get better than what we've been trying to do to save this community. And it's hard work. And it's with no help of involuntary care to the level that we need, it's nearly impossible to do the work and keep it contained. Without, I think I'll start with my question, and if I could come back to a comment, but through you, Your Worship, to Ms. Wood, what would it look like if the hub closed? You've done this work for so long. What would this community look like if the hub closed?
Through Your Worship, to Councillor Perino, I mean, the challenge with answering that question is just the unpredictability of behavior. I know Mr. LaBerge and I have had several conversations about 55 Victoria when that was the only location, and thinking, you know, how could people be okay sitting on the side of a highway, you know, where it's so loud? Like, those are some of the crime prevention through environmental design, like, perspectives and, you know, things that we look at. So the challenge is that this population is so complex and so unpredictable. The drugs change on a day-to-day. I hear from our CSOs that, you know, sometimes the drugs are making people more aggressive. The next week, the drugs are knocking people out, and they're out for 9 hours and they can't physically get them up to move. So it's like we are constantly like reinvigorating ourselves every day to figure out, okay, what is the new challenge today? I think shutting down the hub, I think that I mentioned in my report, will just manifest the challenges in the neighborhood before. I know that they're concentrated around the hub, and I see that. I see it. We go on site on a regular basis. They will be dispersed throughout the neighborhood. The people will still be there if they don't have anywhere to go.
Okay. I'll close by saying I would much prefer that we buy land, which we are doing, to support housing for people who are ready to be in housing. It is up to the province, as Mayor Croak has been such a strong advocate for, to help us with involuntary care for people who want to get well. For those of us, and many of us in the room, who've lost family members to this, and it's not a disgrace, it's a disease. We need help to get these people to get a second chance. I want to give housing for those people who want a second chance and get them up and going. I would much prefer that to keeping the hub open. But I want to say, Ms. Corfield and Ms. Gagnon, the work you're doing is incredible, and thank you so much. You can't know how important you are, but what we're doing to our neighborhoods is so appalling. I can't believe it. If you have not heard Ms. Taylor in the past, for goodness sakes, listen to her today. This is important that we understand that what we're doing to our neighborhoods is just sickening. And I think I will not go for option number one. I could maybe consider option number two. I want to just close by saying, I'm not sure that people heard it, but Mr. Gerard has been 20 years taking care of his health. And I just want to say how inspiring that is to hear that people can get through this. This man has, and I just, man, what a treat to hear him. He was our first speaker this morning, and you know what, it can be done, and he's living proof. So thanks to all the delegation. It was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Himmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to move option 2 to provide bridge funding through the winter months.
And is there a seconder? It's Councillor Perino. Speak to it.
Thank you.
Please.
Incredibly difficult discussion. And again, there's a million comments I could make. I want to begin by thanking the neighborhood and thanking city staff and thanking the providers and thanking everyone who came out this morning. This is clearly a conversation of importance to the community. I am not convinced that if we immediately close the hub that the South End will experience relief. I believe, Ms. Wood, and I believe just in my own observations, if we close it tomorrow, it's not going to resolve anything. It will likely dramatically increase problems because the services won't be in place. So I'm comfortable with bridging through the winter. I do want to ask, option 2 does not give me the same sense of urgency around relocation, and I would like relocation efforts to continue with the same emphasis as they are offered in option 1. I further would ask that in those relocation efforts that we include information when it comes back to council related to Councillor Gesselbrock's information about what is the actual real-time cost of us potentially purchasing land to do this. And I could not agree with Councillor Eastmere more. It's good for us to have this costing. It's not necessarily for us to purchase, but this is good information for us to have when we're speaking with the province. The province is responsible for this. Yeah, I think, Your Worship, I'll leave it there, and thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gesselbrock, and then Councillor Armstrong.
Thanks, Mayor, through you. Just a question to staff. You know, I can get behind having, you know, looking to close it by March 31st. But my concern is kind of what Councillor Hemmons raised was, does that jeopardize basically that the funding that we currently have to operate something, as meager, you know, as it is, and the ability to find a new location and, you know, maintain continuity potentially with the operators? Like, there's been a lot of learning in the last year or 8 months or however long, how to run this and how to mitigate all the issues, staffing it up, that we've built capacity. I don't want to threaten losing that sort of institutional knowledge, which is greatly needed, but needing it in other locations and potentially in multiple other locations that can function better. So that's my question is, I don't want to be jeopardizing the ability to relocate and build on the foundation that we've, you know, fought to basically build.
Through your worship. I think I mentioned it in the presentation and in the report. I can't answer with the definitive because I think we do have another community advisory board through the Reaching Home that also makes decisions about allocations. And I would suggest that whatever decision is made here would affect their decision on funds that they would decide to allocate towards the hub services. Naomi Woodland is here if there are questions about the community entity and Reaching Home. But I think you're right. You know, we have all the partners at the table. We have the coordination happening. It's not to say that it can't happen again. I think, you know, it can, but it, you know, would add more time and, you know, resources, and the resources just might not be there. And the capacity for organizations just might not be there.
So just to follow on that, what I'm hearing there, by choosing this option, there could be some jeopardy. It's not really like this option just puts a little bit more urgency to get on it and see if we can pull something off by March 31st. By choosing this option, there is greater risk that we could lose sort of like what's been built thus far.
Through your worship, I think it's a possibility. I don't want to speak for the CAB because, you know, for them, they're also looking to explore matching funding and of course what other applications are coming in and that sort of stuff. So if there is only short-term funding, that's really challenging for nonprofits to be able to kind of continue on in operations, especially for planning purposes.
Right, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. As much as I'm on the fence on this, I will support this option for the simple fact that I would like us to see these people housed through the winter, and it gives us time to find some solutions. What I would like to see staff look at is, if we are looking at exploring other options, is that we actually explore the different types for different people. If you look at the Houston model, which is probably considered the most successful right now, they're not lumping one group of people into it. They're looking at, okay, those that want recovery need to go to a different type of drop-in house or drop-in supports than those that don't want recovery. And we're missing the boat on that. You know, sitting on the board of the Al-Anon Club or Alano Club, I talk to people in recovery every day that are going back to drugs because they can't get supports in this community, because everything is given to those that are using drugs. There's nothing done for those that want to be in recovery. And I think one of these places should be looked at as a recovery place where those that are in recovery can go and be safe. But I will support this because I think there's an end in sight for the community, and it gives us an opportunity to look at other options.
Thank you. Councillor Eastmere?
Thank you. So I'm just wondering, with option 2 then, would we be able to amend it to include the part from option 1 where staff continue to work with service providers to secure a lease at a more appropriate location? Because I'm not really comfortable with option 2 at this point if it's if there isn't a piece that specifically speaks to relocation planning. So I guess it's maybe a question through to the mover, Councillor Hammonds.
If you want to make that formal amendment, you can make that, Councillor Eastmere, and it can get seconded and carry on.
Okay, so I would formally like to make the amendment that that the part from option 1 about staff working with hub service providers and United Way to identify and secure a lease at a more suitable location be tacked on to option 2. And I think that the piece about the shower program funding potentially being allocated to a new or interim site is a really important piece of this, because the shower program is really important, and I would love to see that included in a hub model, and it says that would free up Caledonia Park for other users, so that would be my amendment to option 2.
I'm a bit concerned, Councillor Eastmere, that we're creating a motion that probably may contain more than is practically necessary and makes commitments that may or may not be appropriate. Ms. Gurry, if you have any comment, I'd appreciate it.
So right now, Your Worship, before the amendment, the motion on the floor is on the screen, and that's that the Finance and Audit Committee recommend that Council allocate $125,000 from the funding designated to support homelessness initiatives in the Special Initiatives Reserve to extend the existing service agreement with UWBC and fund the daytime operations until March 31st to continue service levels over the winter, and 2, direct staff to report back to the Finance and Audit Committee in the winter with an update on alternate funding or service delivery models. And that's on the table, and the amendment would be that it also directs staff to work with the hub service providers and United Way BC to identify and secure more suitable location, which would also include a shower service, is what I'm hearing. So if the amendment was seconded, you would vote on that addition. If it was to pass, then it would be included in the main motion. However, I think what you're saying, Your Worship, is it could be included in number 2, which is directing staff to report back with an update on alternate funding or service delivery models. It's kind of it's elaborating on that, I think, of the motion that's on the floor that Councillor Eastmere is trying to do, if I'm understanding correctly. So it's in Council's seat if you would like to move the amendment or second the amendment.
There's a seconder for Councillor Eastmere's amendment. It's Councillor Hammonds. Discussion on the amendment. Councillor Hammonds.
Thank you. This simply formalizes what I verbalized with staff, which is that we need to begin relocation planning with as much emphasis in option 2 as we indicate in option 1. So I'm happy with this. Thank you.
Does anyone wish to speak to the amendment? Councillor Eastmere.
Thank you. I just to check in when staff would report back to us on this, because I believe I heard Ms. Gurry say in the winter, but I think it would be critical that this comes back to us in the fall. Okay, thank you.
All right.
So under the second point, direct staff to report back to the Finance and Audit Committee in fall 2025 with an update.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. That is not what I understood the motion to be, so thank you for that clarification. So Council's aware of the amendment is actually to direct staff to work with the hub service providers and United Way, that additional motion, but it's also amending the motion, the original motion, to report back in the fall and not the winter as the motion states.
Yes, thank you.
So that is the amendment, Your Worship, as highlighted on the screen, except the fall instead of the winter where it says that.
Are we all in the same boat on this? Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor on the amendment? And those opposed? Back to the main motion. Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thanks, Mayor, through you to staff. I've got a question just regarding, so the funding in the first motion is for the full 2026, and because we won't be, in the second one, we're not directly saying that we want to keep that funding, and so it puts a little bit of precarity into whether we can secure that. I understand that, and I think that, you know, there's enough community desire to see something of this sort because of the benefits of it that it can maintain. My other question, though, is just the funding for this is just solely the 500,000 from the city and United Way. Is that solely just for the daytime operations? Is it separate funding that provides funding for the nighttime operations in that location?
Through your worship, to Councillor Gesbrock, yes. So this is just for the daytime funding that we're discussing here, and the matching funding from Reaching Home. There is some shared cost, you know, with leasing and some supplies. I mean, I'm sure the operators could speak to that. The overnight funding comes from BC Housing.
Okay, great, thanks. And the other question I had is just in terms of from now till March 31st, will we still be looking at ongoing adjustments to operations, just to kind of mitigation actions in terms of for the community? I know there's talk about maybe looking at options for relocating entrance and whatever else.
Through your worship, we can continue the mitigation strategies that we talked about. I think that there may be some challenge knowing that we're temporarily going to be there to relocate the entryway, because there is some funding required, an investment from the building owner to make those changes. And if we're only going to be there for the next few months, it's something that we'd have to work out with the property owner. There's also some staffing components that we were looking at for shifting to the different entry locations. So that would be an ongoing conversation with the service providers, whether they wanted to redirect those funds, or if they're looking at other funding models for another location, you know, could those funds be best spent on something else? So I think that would be an ongoing conversation, and we welcome any direction from the committee on that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Worship. I'll support this, but I want to say very clearly that we are now, with this motion, should it go ahead, we're asking the community to put up with another 8 months of this. So we desperately need to have some additional solutions. And so I really encourage staff, you know, if we have to have more meetings than what we already are, I'm in for it. We have to do more, because what this does to the neighborhood is just so appalling. And it just continues on. So I hope that certainly at the UPCM we speak very clearly, as many of the mayors and councillors from other communities have to our MLAs and the Premier, that we need help.
Thank you. Is there anyone on staff who can answer the question about the fenced overdose prevention site next door to City Hall, what the cost of that building was, or how much money Island Health has put into it? Is anyone there who can assist me? Mr. Lindsay?
Sorry, Your Worship, we'd have to report back to you on that.
Right. My speculation is it was millions of dollars. And so that's where I want to start. It's a necessary service. It is saving lives. How many? Can't say for sure. The hub is saving lives. Can't say for sure. The provision of social services and healthcare generally saving lives. Can't say for sure. What we have today in front of us, though, is a neighborhood that is saying it is dangerous. The services being provided, no one's denying they're important. I heard a lot of compassion today from the delegations, and my response to this isn't based just on what the delegations have had to say. But we know that given that particular location, the concerns around safety, my wife and myself driving up Nickel Street, very close, not close enough to be terrifying, but close enough that some individual was a split second away from falling in front of our car, and that would have been the end of it. I'm conscious of the fear. I'm conscious of the fact also that the fear is generated by the behaviors of individuals, many of whom, and I have called for it over and over again, should be in secure, involuntary care. Hospital staff, staff working the front lines, paramedics, firefighters, everybody seems to get it. Even the provincial government is slowly getting it. Those folks take in an incredible amount of resources and cause the most pain and havoc and misery, not just to themselves, but to where the people they associate with and to their families, many of whom I hear from frequently begging for some kind of solution so that they don't have to wait until they hear that their son or their daughter or their spouse or their whatever has passed away in the street, died because of what I have called criminal, capital punishment with basically criminal neglect by us as a society. I could dribble on for a long time about this, but we're trying to be down, we're down to the nitty-gritty today. I want to be very clear. I am not in favor, and it's the reason I asked about the cost of the overdose prevention site. I am not in favor of purchasing a purposeful, purpose-built site on municipal taxpayer dollars to provide a service that should be provided, if it's going to be provided at all, by the provincial government. All right, please, respect for the chair. Kevin, I know you like to talk, I do too, but this is my place. Vancouver's taken it on, and does Vancouver look any better? Is the downtown east side a safer, happier place than it was 2 years ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago? So I'm not prepared to participate in a process that just enables this all to continue. This is not the best solution. We're going to be asking this neighborhood in particular to continue to suffer for a period of time. At the same time, we're all moved by compassion. We know that if there's no hub, there were more people who will spend the night in the streets, that they will be less likely to contact and be acquainted with services. And we know that none of this is going to get really substantially better unless we see the kind of services provided on what I will call a regular and permanent basis. One of the reasons I'm prepared to support option 2, and I'm not overly thrilled with it to be quite candid, is simply because we will see the impact of the new housing units at Heart and Hearth, which will hopefully have some impact on the community. And I must say quite bluntly, if it doesn't, and that isn't apparent, then we will have to figure out another path from here. But in the meantime, the community is suffering, the individuals who are seeking those services are suffering, our staff are overburdened, the people at City Hall, the next item on the agenda, feel threatened and have been threatened and suffered theft, et cetera, all outlined in the report and the next item on the agenda. This is a horrible situation to be in. So I'm going to repeat it quite simply again. We need secure and voluntary care in this province. In the meantime, the city will do what it can, but I want to emphasize I'm supporting this, but I am not prepared to consider or support the acquisition of properties to provide permanent hub services that should be provided by the province. And one of the reasons that I'm not hopeful that another location will be determined or found is because staff have already expended incredible efforts over time, which they have reported to us on various occasions, looking for a private landlord who will provide that kind of building, because who wants to? You're a private commercial landlord in a large space, you want a long-term arrangement, and right now, the province is not prepared to commit to those arrangements. So for what it's worth, I'm going to urge people once again to write to their MLAs and write to the Premier and make it very clear, as I've said over and over again, the results of the provincial election were pretty clear to me. The street disorder in general, and I'll try and be quick, was a wake-up call to this government about the concerns of citizens, many of whom have assembled here this morning to express their concerns, and the concerns that are reflected in the faces of the caregivers who are here this morning, the care providers, the service providers. This is a vote-determining issue. It shouldn't have to be a vote-determining issue, but we have, it appears, not made it clear enough to the provincial government and to the feds, to the extent that they play a role in this around bail reform and the constancy of repeat crime, the Save Our Streets organizations, all of those things. It ain't good enough. The voters are not happy. The citizens, whether they be living in the streets or in their homes or struggling to survive, being seniors, they deserve better. And if we can find the money, as we did hundreds of billions of dollars, as I've reminded everyone, provincially and federally, to deal with COVID, we can surely find a few $billion, and that's what it's going to cost at a minimum, to deal with the topic that is the constant topic on the lips of everyone I speak to in this community, whether it's in the grocery store or in the street or just sitting in a restaurant. So I'm going to support it. I'm not thrilled with it. I wish we could do better for this neighborhood, but we cannot deliver, and we cannot deliver for the citizens of this community unless the province not only continues to do what it has done so far, but adds way more resources to this, recognizing again, I would hope, that this is the crisis of our times. We are worried about Mr. Trump, we're worried about trade, we're worried about the economy, but every day when you're being confronted by that tide of human misery, as far as I'm concerned, it's the crisis that I hear about. It must be the crisis that most of you are feeling. So forgive the ranting on. As you might expect, after 6.5 years of being mayor, I'm getting just a tiny bit frustrated with the fact that in a 21st century modern liberal stable democracy, we can't seem somehow to care for the most vulnerable, protect the citizens, and provide the kind of services that other parts of the world seem to have been able to deliver, such as Europe. You do not see this in every part of the world. We know we can do better. So, forgive me, Council, I appreciate the indulgence. The motion's on the table. All those in favor? And any opposed? None. Motion carries. I want to thank everyone who came this morning. Thank everyone who came this morning to speak. I know it's a challenge. It's not much of a challenge for me anymore, as you can see, to talk and talk and talk, but I appreciate it is for the folks who took the time. I appreciate the service providers and the challenges you're in. I think some of the criticisms that were leveled at you this morning were not fair, but I'm not going to interrupt folks when they're pouring out their hearts in a public place. This is not easy for anybody, but just remind yourselves. At the end of the day, everyone in that street is somebody's child or relative or friend or your former neighbor or a kid you went to school with. And it's hard sometimes because I hate drug use. I want to make that really clear. I hate drug use. I've never used drugs. I don't approve of drug use. So if anyone has any doubts about where I'm coming from, I'm not there. But at the same time, I recognize fully that when you are down that path, and if you have a severe mental health issue and you've suffered some form of trauma, like the parable of the Good Samaritan, we cannot pass you by. So on one level, it disgusts me. On another level, we have a duty to our fellow citizens. So to staff, thank you. Get on with it as best you can with Council's direction. It is a virtually impossible task we're asking of you. The next item is fencing and parking lot improvements. Mr. Lindsay, you're going to introduce this.
Thank you, Worship, and I am going to just make some brief comments on this, but before we get started, I think at the risk of stating the obvious, with 20 minutes left in your scheduled meeting, I think it's fair to say we're not going to get to the majority of the items on your agenda. So just for awareness of those in the audience, we'll certainly start the next item, but for the remaining items, if we don't get to those, they will come directly to one of your next two council meetings, either Monday or the 28th. So we'll go away and do a little bit of agenda planning and bring those forward directly to council. There's definitely some discussions on there that we think need a little, we need some time with council to unpack, and look forward to having those conversations, but I don't think there's any way we can do justice to trying to jam them in the next 20 minutes here. So apologize for that, but we'll do our best to get those to you in the next couple of weeks directly at council. On this next topic, Your Worship, and I know it says in your agenda, Mr. LeBerge is going to introduce it, and I'm going to turn it over to him immediately, but given some of the some of the recent comments that we've seen, some of the media coverage, some of the extensive amounts of email that council's received on this topic, I just want to give a little bit of background from staff's perspective about certainly why we're here and why this is coming forward. And first of all, I want to, and this is not for council, but this is more for the community and anyone listening, that this is not a council-initiated project. This wasn't, council didn't ask us to go away and look at this issue and come back with a solution. This is not reflected in your strategic plan. This is not reflected in your capital plan. This is 100% a project that's being brought forward by staff. Today is the first time that the Finance and Audit Committee is hearing about it, but ultimately that council's hearing about it, about this proposal, and why staff feel it's necessary to take these steps. I was saying to someone at the break, I'm sure for some this seems tone deaf given the discussion we just had about the very real impacts that our community is seeing around the provision of these services. But when I step back and look at it, I think it really highlights the challenges we're having as local government in when we're asked to step outside of our lane, and the very limited abilities and resources we have to deal with implementing upstream solutions, and the result that we have to, at the end, is just manage kind of the downstream impacts of these. So I think this report highlights that also. I want to talk a little bit about the role of an employer. And of course, the city, our primary function, why we exist, is to provide services to the community. That's what we're all about. But to provide those services, we need employees. And when we have employees, we're an employer, and now we're subject to WorkSafe. So under WorkSafe, it's very clear. Employers must take steps to ensure a safe work environment for all workers, including identifying and addressing hazards. And as, I don't have to say this to this council, but you're certainly aware there's real consequences for not living up to those responsibilities. So WorkSafe and our responsibility as an employer is the primary driver for this recommendation and why we're in front of you this morning. Certainly we have a role of stewards of the community property to protect City Hall, the Service and Resource Center, the surrounding gardens and the park. These are community assets. We have a responsibility to maintain them, there's no question. And I do want to acknowledge there's a considerable amount of work being done already and I think a lot of it goes unseen because a lot of it happens early in the day or late at night, but a considerable amount of work that's being done by our community safety officers, our Parks, Rec, and Culture staff, our gardeners there, our clean team, our CSOs, to make sure that these buildings are being maintained, that they're safe, not only for staff, but for the general public when they come in the morning to attend. Without the work that they do around the clock, it would be a very different situation. There's no question that council has invested considerably in public safety. Just your budget this year included new positions for RCMP, for community safety officers, for new firefighters, really trying to support the overall needs across the entire community. I think from my observation, given the current context at City Hall, the CSO team is just, being the nature of the challenge, is just spending far too much time at City Hall to make sure that the property there in the surrounding area is safe. I'd rather see them out in the broader community providing services. But this is the reality that we're currently being confronted with. Your Worship, a lot of questions and comments being raised around the cost of the fence, and we'll go into that a little bit more in staff's presentation, but certainly it's not just the fence. There's other improvements to the site that are required in order to support this project. And this is, some questions about, well, why not a different type of fence? This is the same type of fence that's currently around behind the SARC building right now, which is the wrought iron metal fence. It's the same type of fence that was put in around the overdose prevention service. The idea of this kind of ornamental black fence. We've had fencing, and Mr. LeBerge will speak to this, I'm sure. We've had fencing along the back of our parking lots, along Wesley Street, chain link fence. They're almost immediately cut right after they were installed. We had a gate, it was pretty much removed right after it was installed. So we do need something more robust. If we're going to do this, there is no half measures. Certainly, I share and recognize many of the comments that are coming in from the community. There are, if you asked our Parks and Rec staff, our engineering staff, there are hundreds of projects around the community that we'd rather spend this $400,000 on than fencing around SARC. There's no question about that. You're here today from a community that itself could use further investments and further support. So fully recognize that. And it's not our first response just to come forward and ask for money. It's after we've made other attempts and other efforts, but we feel that this is necessary. So we certainly recognize that doing this project it's not going to make the problem disappear. This is much larger. But however, given the immediate concerns, we felt it was necessary to bring this project forward and seek your support. So having said that brief introduction, I'll turn it over to Mr. LeBerge.
Mr. LeBerge.
Well, thanks, Mr. Lindsay. I think you covered most of my notes, so I'll just take questions. Mr. Lindsay covered a lot of ground.
Mr. LeBerge, I just want to assure everyone to try and lighten the mood in this place that this was not a plan by senior management to get the mayor more bloody press time in the last 24 hours than he's had to endure for a month or two. Please carry on.
So Mr. Lindsay did quite a bit of my work already, and the delegates you just heard from also did a lot of it. You've heard for the last couple of hours the impacts on a neighborhood and on residents to have very intensive service like a drop-in hub. What we're going to talk about now is the impacts to local government and to a workplace on being the neighbor in proximity of the only overdose prevention site in the city. I'm going to lay a bit of the groundwork, and I'm going to let our senior community safety officer, Barry Hornby, speak to the operational realities of what it's like on the ground to try and enforce in these circumstances. And then Mr. Bryson from facilities is going to actually speak about the details and costing of the project. So I wanted to start with a bit of context because this area has a complex history, and it would start really in January of 2017. That's when the only overdose prevention site that we have in the city opened on Wesley Street behind SARC at 437 Wesley. That was the genesis, although superficially, for about a year of entrenched homelessness in that area. So we know that's a dead-end laneway. At the time, the only other thing on the street was the SARC building and the now demolished Franklin Street gym. So very, very quiet, very easy place for homelessness to entrench. About a year later, it was in March of 2018, is when a first tent city, not everybody may remember, was established. It was actually on the lawn of City Hall. This was a couple of months before the big tent city on Port Drive. But within the period of about a week, we had up to about 100 people that were occupying there. And to be clear, that was very much a protest encampment, protesting passed up opportunities for provincial funding for housing and for frustration and lack of services. And I think Councillor Perino asked the question of Ms. Wood earlier, what are the consequences if we shut these things down? Well, one thing we do know in the city is that we have a very, very large homeless population. You know, the best estimates is around 1,000. And when we don't have places for people to go and we don't have services, that's one of the things that manifests. We've seen it time and time in other cities and here. You end up with entrenched encampments. And I would say, in great credit to Mr. Hornby and his team and the funding of council having a robust CSO program, that's how we've prevented another large tent city in this community, considering those challenges. So the Port City, or Port Drive tent city lasted for 6.5 months. It was closed by an injunction in December of 2018. In its period, it grew to be, I think, probably still the largest tent city in the history of the province. We know that there were over 300 occupants in it at the time. And in the closure, BC Housing created 2 temporary housing sites in the city. And what not everybody may know is that did not completely house or end homelessness as it was from that encampment. A great number of people were kind of released in the community with no supports. There was offers of rent supplements, report to shelters, et.cetera. But a lot of it just displaced back into homelessness around the city. It was diffused. But as I said, Wesley Street was always the spot that had anchored, and this is where it grew. Now, by this time, at the other end of the street was Harris House. It was a health center, and it focused on care for these very vulnerable populations. It was known as the Needle Exchange. It was much more than that. But we had OPS on one side and Harris House, and it entrenched and it grew, and it was very stubborn, and despite our best efforts, we never did close it down. When it tipped was actually in 2020 during COVID, when the province asked that we not displace or disturb people that were sheltering because of sickness, et cetera. And in our daily cleanings and movements and other measures were stalled for a number of months, and that's when it really tipped. And I'm sure many of people in the committee have seen photographs where we were there firsthand. The entire street on both sides was lined from end to end with contiguous tents, probably 100+ occupants. And it kind of came to a head in December that year when there was a massive fire that swept through these tents, which are, as I say, were all contiguous. Explosions. It's a miracle it didn't take down the Franklin Street gym. But this is when it took some drastic responses from the city. We closed the street down. We brought excavators in. It was cleaned out, and the area was left fenced off for a number of months. And the reason it was kept fenced for a number of months is that there was such a history and entrenchment of homelessness in that area. We just knew it was going to recreate. I should add, during this period before the fire, that actually Harris House closed its doors after many years, simply because their staff and their leadership said that they could not safely operate in this area. That service was never truly replaced. They did some mobile work, but it was just another resource that was lost in this. So that's the context. Homelessness has creeped back on the Wesley Street for a number of reasons, mostly because of that historical context. It still persists. Now I'm going to jump to December 2022. That's when the OPS moved from 437 Wesley to 250 Albert. It moved for a number of reasons. It's larger, it's expanded. It was important to move it out of what was a supported housing building because it was putting a lot of pressure on the residents there and bringing the street into their very home. So created a challenging dynamic for SARC and City Hall, because now we had, the historical remnants of entrenchment on Wesley Street, and now we had it across the street. Jumping to September of 2024, because I just want to keep building the context. The committee will recall that police arrested 2 individuals inside the OPS. They were carrying methamphetamine, cocaine, fentanyl, opioid tablets, and a loaded handgun. The investigation that flowed from that resulted in 33 drug trafficking and weapon charges. With this case and what you've heard from a lot of the delegation is it illustrates that these facilities, they're really essential for harm reduction and public health. They also attract a criminal or predatory culture, and that includes organized crime, incidentally. These are people that seek to exploit and prey upon the people that access these services. The impacts, like what we saw in that investigation, aren't limited inside the facility, but more often they extend to the surrounding areas. They contribute to crime, to drug trafficking, intimidation, and unsafe conditions. The area that's most affected by these factors are actually the City Hall properties, the 2 City Hall parking lots beside SARC and City Hall on the south end, and by extension, Wesley Street behind Sark. I know that the committee and council like statistics, but I can tell you there's no single comprehensive data set that captures the total volume of nature of encounters that our staff had. You know, the Tempest system that we use is to assign tasks. It was never designed as an analytical database. When I asked my staff to try and sift through just how busy we've been in these areas since 2018, it took one of my clerks 2 full days, and they reported back that my department alone, between CSOs and bylaws, have had 2,596 calls in our parking lot and in the alley behind City Hall since 2018. That doesn't include the impacts, as Mr. Lindsay said, to our Parks Department, to our landscapers, to our custodians. And I can tell you anecdotally that those are the folks that are most impacted and under siege, because they're the ones that are here early in the morning, late at night, and working along. And I think Mr. Hornby can speak to that. In those 2,596 calls, social disorder 1,218, security incidents 464, encampments and structures 218, assisting the police 77 times, 18 weapon incidents. You know, it goes on and on. You know, if I just summarize the different calls that sifted through them: fighting and violent assaults, weapon possession, hit and run incidents to staff vehicles, impaired drivers. The OPS kind of has a zero footprint, has no parking. Every day we watch people drive their vehicles, and a great number of them park in our staff parking lots or in our patron parking, and they go into the OPS and they use substances, and they get out, they damage vehicles. We've had a number of incidents of damaged vehicles. We've seen the police apprehend people. Damage and theft from vehicles. For a time, the meal program was served out of the OPS, and because they were served at the gate, and everybody would take their bags and their food and put them on the hoods of staff vehicles, and that's where they would eat their food, scratching and damaging vehicles. We talked about the drug dealing and drug use, fires, graffiti. We've had damage to our buildings and our infrastructure. We've had our heat pumps stripped out, you know, thousands of dollars for, you know, a small amount of recyclables. Our staff have been harassed and intimidated. The congregations that Mr. Hornby is going to talk about, 20 to 30 people just about practically every night after night hours. Human waste and urine in the doorways and the horticultural areas that our staff have to pick up. Inaccessible doorways to our staff that have to come in early in the morning. Repeated overdose incidents. The OPS operates from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m., or I'm sorry, 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day. Our CSOs are continuously responding to overdoses in our parking lot, not only during the hours of the OPS, but, you know, as people are in the area waiting for it to open. One of the files I was reviewing yesterday talked about a young employee that was coming to work one day, found a person passed out in front of SARC. Their clothing was on fire, and she had to douse them with her soft drink that she was carrying. These are the types of things that our staff are encountering on a regular basis. To provide a little more context, I was going through the Joint Safety Committee meeting for City Hall and SARC from August in 2024, and the following safety concern was discussed. There have been several incidents of significant violence on Wesley Street in recent weeks as tension has escalated between rival drug dealers, and RCMP have increased their presence in the area. Police and CSOs are routinely finding weapons, including bear spray, knives, brass knuckles, and firearms on the street. One of the recent incidents involved a firearm. So these are the types of challenges that are occupational safety. You know, we're not talking about trips and falls and sprains and slippery surfaces. These are the type of issues that they're trying to address. I can tell the committee our Respectful Spaces bylaw is fairly new. We've suspended 7 individuals from City Hall and SARC property, and this is just from reviewing CCTV footage of events that are occurring during night hours, fire setting. Someone set large fires in the doorway by the mayor's office, and you can see the scorch remnants. It was remarkable they didn't burn the building down. We've seen some spectacular fights, like a girl pinned down and beaten with a hose and then menaced with a knife that went on for minutes and minutes. We had people that have thrown rocks through the windows of cars. They threatened our CSO members that are going. These are the types of events that we've been suspending people for. But I'm just a bureaucrat. I've told you anecdotally kind of what I see in our reports. I'd just like maybe to pause for a minute and let Mr. Hornby talk about what it's like for his teams to deal with these things.
Thank you, Mr. LaBerge. Mr. Hornby, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We could spend all day at City Hall in Sark, constantly going there. Staff start work at 5:30 in the morning, and many work right through till 1:30 in the morning. We have custodial staff that are in both buildings on their own. Often they are calling us to escort them between the two buildings because they can't get out of City Hall to get back to Sark or vice versa. We have counselors that work later at night, and we're cognizant of you folks working and make sure that you're not having to walk through those crowds. People that are substance affected are highly unpredictable. 1 minute they're great to deal with and you're having a good conversation, and the next minute they've pulled a knife on us or staff. Our staff are highly compassionate individuals, not just CSOs, but the staff that work in those two buildings. It's traumatizing to them when they come out and find somebody underneath their car or inside their car. They always have that, what if I hadn't looked underneath my car, I could have drove over someone. Vehicles damaged is a huge part of that, and just walking outside of the building. The problem with spending so much time there is we're not able to be in the rest of the downtown and the rest of the community. The hub takes a lot of our time as well, and that, so you spend between those two facilities and you're not getting into our parks and our other spaces just in the downtown. Council was graciously enough to have more staff hired, and that's gonna alleviate that in the future, but we spend a lot of time there. Lots of times when we're booking off a shift, there's 30, 40 people congregating beside City Hall, and one of the biggest issues is the fact that the overdose prevention site is only open till 9. They start shuffling people out at 8:30 p.m. and when you're substance affected, you're not going to go very far, so you stumble down into a parking stall or onto the grass. And then you wait for it to open the next day, and staff start early in the morning, and it's 11 o'clock's a long time. People do not undertake in substance use between the hours of 11 and 9 p.m. at night. They are constantly looking at their fix all the time. So that's a challenge that we have. They know it's there. We've had several overdoses, like Mr. LaRouge has said, right outside the fence. If we hadn't checked on them, we're unsure what the outcome would have been. We spend a lot of time with our horticulture staff that don't feel safe because their back's down weeding or planting things, and they're coming across weapons in the gardens. The gardens are being damaged. Just recently this week, I'm reviewing some CCTV footage right along the cement wall at City Hall. An individual dug the grass out and lit a fire overnight and had a bonfire going in the middle of the night, put it out at about 5:30 in the morning and filled it back in, and away we went. Sprinklers are damaged. Our CCTV has been cut where we have damage to infrastructure. The fire outside of the mayor's door, one night the individual turned around with their butane torch and then burned the camera where it's not replaceable. So we're seeing a lot of that. We've had fires around City Hall during working hours where we'll get a phone call through that someone's burning paper on the steps going into legislative services. So, and we're seeing this not just in this area, but throughout the community. but I'd rather have my team in the rest of the community than staying at our building, effectively acting as security guards on those two places. Staff work 7 days a week as well, so the city is not a Monday to Friday, 8 to 4:30 type job. We're there 7 days a week from early in the morning. A lot of staff don't feel safe leaving or coming in the morning, so we get asked to escort them in or out or get them to park closer. Our custodial staff have been threatened just taking the garbage out or the recycling out, and a lot of times that has to stay inside the building till it gets to day shift, which adds to the staff coming on during the day. A lot of these staff work alone as well. If they are off work at 9 o'clock at night and they can't safely get out of the building, they're having to call the CSOs, and if we're tied up at another incident, they're calling the RCMP, and they're delayed leaving their workspace. Mr. LaBerge talked about fires up against the building. It's a miracle that City Hall hasn't burned down, quite honestly. I think it's through the years and years of varathane on the back door that it hasn't burned through that, but these are significant fires being lit. Feces in the doorways and around the building, structures set up along the building. The garden area is, we're having discussions around how to change that. It's a little hidden area there as well. Large groups of people are intimidating for staff, and again, I talk to the unpredictability of people that are substance affected. Usually the CSO team are in groups of 2 or have 2 officers. You're way outmanned and you're way out surrounded, so you use the compassion-based approach that we use every day, and we don't see the level of violence. But when someone does decide to turn on you, and I've been at that end where I've had someone threaten me broad daylight in that parking lot. Luckily, it didn't escalate any further than that, but we ended up having to have the police called. The drug dealing that happens, it's like a thoroughfare of drug dealers driving through there. One of the main things is it's a hot route between Wesley and the OPS. So they come through our back parking lot. One of the principles around crime prevention through environmental design is to block those areas off. People involved in criminal activity don't like to be trapped or don't like to have an exit route. Well, when you can drive through a parking lot and around it, there's no deterrent to doing what you're doing. I can honestly speak that I'm surprised we haven't had more violence because of the rival. They deal right out in front of OPS, right in the City Hall lot. We've had impaired drivers at 8 in the morning. One drove over the cement wall where staff were coming into work, and the only reason they didn't continue to drive through there is because they got high-centered on the cement wall. We had recently 2 incidents where my team observed someone buy drugs in the parking lot, use in their car. The car was running and in drive. We had to activate 911 because the worst thing you can do is knock on the window and they hit the gas, and now they've driven through a bunch of people or vehicles. That's a scary scenario. I, in my job, know how to observe and how to deal with that, but our general staff don't know how to deal with that and are scared to deal with that, and that's a huge challenge. The site is a hot spot, and it does draw a lot of stuff. I don't have the powers to deal with open drug use. I'm not a police officer. I'm a peace officer, and can't deal with that. We discourage people to do that and go use safely at the OPS, but when the hours are limited, it's hard to get them to do that. We have overdoses at all hours of the night and during the day, which is tough to see because they'll hide in the gardens, they'll hide under cars. Yeah, it's a challenging place to patrol, and my biggest thing is that we're not out in the rest of the community helping people that have spoken here today, where we're delayed because we're tied up at our own workspace trying to keep it safe and open. So, like I said, open to any questions. Thank you.
So thank you, Mr. Hornby. So the question is why enforcement alone isn't enough. Our internal approach until now has been reactive. We increased patrols, additional monitoring, regular staff briefings, staff LT. All our available information is demonstrated that the challenges are persistent and they're having a measurable and compounding impact on our staff safety and city operations. As long as the OPS remains in close proximity, these challenges are going to persist, and that's why we have to move to some, as Mr. Hornby said, crime prevention based strategies. So the proposal, which Mr. Bryson's going to talk about in a moment, is going to include perimeter fencing that will define the boundaries and restrict unauthorized access to our parking lots. It's going to discourage loitering, reduce concealment areas, and signal these spaces are actively managed and secured. And Mr. Lindsay started off saying that, you know, the request reflects our obligations as employers to protect our employees, to safeguard our assets, and provide responsible responses to known and ongoing risks. As Mr. Lindsay said, we acknowledge that this is a significant investment in a time when the council is facing difficult decisions around competing infrastructure priorities and a clear desire to limit tax increases. And we realize you have to carefully weigh this against other pressing community needs. However, the issues, as I said, around here are ongoing, well documented, and present a real and immediate risk to not only our staff safety, but the public that access these facilities. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Bryson.
Thank you, Dave. Mayor and Council, all I can really add, I don't have too much, there's been a lot said on the impact of staff, but excuse me, I do take care of the custodial side of our operation. And we have a shift preference system where the custodians can put in their preference of where they want to work in the city of 1 to 5. We have about 35 custodians that use this shift preference form. Nobody puts down City Hall Sark. Nobody wants to work down there. So we have the staff that we have down there, and they do an excellent job. And the staff that work first thing in the morning do unfortunately come across all of the things that were said by Mr. Hornby and Ms. LaBarge and more. And you talk to those folks, and they do handle it quite well. But you can tell that there's definitely concern for PTSD and all those concerns, and anybody that works down there on the custodial staff, whether it's day shift or night shift, do feel those effects. As far as the project itself, the fence, I think it has been mentioned, is about 1.8 meters high, so it's about 6 feet high, which is a little bit higher than we would normally put around. But it was also mentioned that we've tried chain link fence in various areas. It doesn't last very long. It gets cut. We replace it. It gets cut again. We've tried doubling up on the chain link fence, and it just gets taken down. So putting up a stronger ornamental fence is definitely the way to go with this kind of enclosure. The fence itself is about $115,000. The remainder of the funding that we're looking for would go towards groundworks. We have to regrade the whole parking lot at Sark because it's actually 2 levels. So we have to regrade that so it's accessible completely. We had to configure a couple things to make sure we did meet with the fire department and make sure that they could get an engine in if they had to. Emergency vehicles get in and out of that parking lot, so we had to make sure that that was accessible. And then the remainder of the funding goes towards curbing. Asphalt's going to be a large portion of that, sidewalk modifications, that type of thing, some accessible entrances. We are putting more accessible parking stalls into the parking lot at Sark, so folks that need those spots will have them. Changing how we flow traffic through to City Hall. So I mean, there's no way we can put up as many fences as we want, and it's the way City Hall in particular is configured is very difficult to enclose it. It's just the nature of the facility, and that's the kind of the attraction of City Hall as a facility is the way it sits on top of the hill and the way it was built when it was built. So to try and enclose that to make sure that nobody gets in there is very, very impossible. So, but we try and regulate the flow of traffic. make sure that people that need to get into the facility can get into the facility, but in the evenings we can close it down as best as possible. So there will have be large gates that we won't have motorized gates. There will be gates that are operated by staff. So our staff will have to make sure to close in the evenings and open up in the mornings. But I'm sure they would far rather deal with that than having some overdose people in some shrubs, or deal with some of the stuff they deal between 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock before anyone comes to work. So that's kind of how we broke it down. If there's any questions on any of that, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you very much. In order, Councillors Eastmere, Hemmons, and Gesselrock.
Actually, I don't have a question, so I'll defer to others for the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you, staff, for bringing this forward. I'll preface by saying I'm not a supporter of the fence idea, but I'm really looking forward to hearing from my colleagues. My question is about Island Health and the OPS specifically. And I first want to say it's really interesting to me that the themes that I'm hearing is that there's a necessary service value with the OPS, but that it's attracting crime and deeply disturbing activity that we're needing to mitigate, and that the problem is not centralized in where the service is delivered, but in the immediate area. So this is exactly the same conversation as the hub. And I also want to further that to hear that staff are experiencing potential PTSD from this, that is what the neighbors of the hub are feeling as well. So I need to make that comparison. So I find it interesting that the OPS has a big fence. There's space, obviously, for the people who are using the service there, but that it's fenced off and it's bleeding into City Hall. So has Island Health weighed in on this at all? Have we discussed this with them? Have we talked to them about why their fence, like of all of the services around, it would make most sense to me that is the last to be fenced, because that's where people are accessing the service. So if I could just have a comment on that, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, through your worship, yes, of course, we do have we have monthly meetings with Island Health, and we discuss all the issues that we're describing. In fairness to them, they moved the OPS into that building when it was actually owned and leased to them for an OPS by a nonprofit. They have since purchased the building, and now there are significant renovations underway, and that'll be going on for most of this year. So the flow and configuration of the OPS is going to change, and we're mindful that it's been done very much on the fly, so we'll have to wait till next year to see what it actually looks like when it's finished. That said, it's not Island Health that actually runs the OPS. It is a non-profit society, so we don't have in the day-to-day operations healthcare professionals or the Island Health security like you see at the hospital. This is all done by frontline non-profit workers, and I think the focus really is what occurs right in the immediacy of their facility, and there is no attention on kind of the broader impacts.
Thank you. A follow-up to that, I understand that there were 33 trafficking and weapons charges in the OPS. What has the response been to that? If the focus is specifically within the building, and they're kind of whoever that is, nonprofit Island Health turning a blind eye or not focused on what is happening in the immediate surrounding neighborhood, they are indeed having challenges directly in the building. 33 trafficking and weapons charges. So comment on that would be appreciated.
Yeah, it was through your worship to Councillor Hemmons. I mean, that was a one-off event, and to put it in context, they found the drugs in the firearm in the OPS, and the follow-up investigation resulted in search warrants and seizure of more drugs in other locations. So it's far more complex than that. The reason that I raised the example, though, is that it illustrates that when you have groups of these populations, that there are people that are targeting and exploiting, that as Mr. Hornby says, there are drug dealers, and as I said, organized crime that go and feed these populations where they're at, and it occurs not only in the facility, but I'd say more so in the adjacent areas like our parking lots.
Thank you. I have further, but I'll hear from colleagues.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gesselbrock?
Thanks, Mayor, through you. Just a question, just my recollection, so the fence on the SARC building parking lot, what areas currently has the old chain link fence on it that keeps getting cut through? Like, does it limit access from Wesley Street into the Dunsmuir area currently, if it didn't have holes cut through it?
So the west parking, which is directly behind the SARC building, is at wrought iron, more kind of robust fencing. From the end of that parking lot by where the generator is to the end of our property in our parking lot, chain link fence was installed, and it really was torn to ribbons within probably hours, if not days after it was installed. We kept repairing it. We kept repairing the gates, and it just gets torn apart every time. And we realized that a fence of that construct in that area is futile, and that's part of why, in the case of SARC, because we have the impacts on both sides, that the proposal is to put robust fences on either side, on the Dunsmuir side and the Wesley Street side, so during the night hours, and that's when people are there and just have a lot of time to work away at. And we get a lot of tax on our fences that, they'd have to go through several layers to make it that thoroughfare that they're seeking.
Okay, so the describe it, the Wesley Street side and then all the way down to Dunsmuir has already been fenced. It's just it is just the Dunsmuir side that isn't fenced yet. Hasn't had fence previously put on it.
Well, the fence that is being proposed is from the corner of the generator, the corner of the south end of SARC, and that would continue down to our property line. So just what's in yellow, that's where the proposed fence would be installed.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Eastmere.
So just to confirm, there wouldn't be any fencing preventing people from coming up from Wallace and, for example, like up those stone steps that go through the garden path?
Through your worship, that's correct.
Okay. So I'd just like to say, like, looking at the proposed fence area, there's all kinds of gaps, and you'd be blocking access from one path but not another, and I think it's just going to lead to migration around the building and new configurations and not actually solve anything. And we'll be back talking about a bigger perimeter fence, which just really goes against everything I believe in as far as like public access and how I really think is just going to move the problem 5 feet sideways. Really credit to the CSOs for their work and the relationship building that they've done with the folks lingering around City Hall, and for their service to staff. We're really lucky to have the CSOs doing that work. And I personally never feel unsafe, but I recognize that's because of your work, and some incidents have occurred, but I would really need to see the actual data to as far as like numbers of calls to police, CSO time, vandalism incidents and associated costs, and dangerous run-ins between staff and individuals to make a proper case for this. And I wish that we had had a chance to hear more about this, perhaps through like our council and CAO matters before this came to council in this way. As a former reporter, I was really dismayed by the media coverage and the misleading headlines, which really played on people's emotions, and I feel irresponsibly misrepresented this topic with headlines like "Plan to fence off Nanaimo City Hall from overdose site." That was the entire headline in the Canadian press. I think that's completely irresponsible. I know most journalists don't write their own headlines, so I'm not blaming that reporter, but that's on the editor, and many people don't read past the headline, and I just have to flag that because unfortunate to me that we couldn't even have this conversation before it was blown up into something that, again, paints Nanaimo as a city of fences, which I know is something that this and the previous council have been working really, really hard to change that narrative. So, and you know, when you look at the cost of this project, the cost of grading and the fencing, it's almost the same as we're contributing to running the drop-in hub. And if people had a place to go, and if the province was doing their job as far as providing adequate housing and healthcare for people, and if treatment and mental health supports were actually available without massive wait lists and unaffordable costs, and provided in the places where the province has already committed to putting them and so far failed to follow through on, like at the OPS location, we wouldn't be considering band-aid solutions like fences. And I fully support the existence and need for the OPS location, but we also need the accompanying supports and services that the province in partnership with Island Health has committed to and so far failed to provide. So for me, I would frankly rather hire security if that's what it's going to take, or more CSOs, because at least that's providing jobs and you're not just moving the problem sideways and having to build a bigger fence in the future, because that's just not a path I'm comfortable going down. And I have to ask, where are the RCMP on this if the drugs are being dealt in the parking lot of City Hall? Thank you.
Through your worship, we do have Constable Adam Taylor from the RCMP bike unit who's available to give a police perspective or comment on policing if that's of interest to the committee.
That's of interest to me.
Please. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So, from a policing perspective, I ran some stats, but if I'd had a little bit more time, I could have come up with probably a more accurate number to support what we've been doing. I know, being a member of the bike unit, we have changed our daily routine to include the SARC and City Hall for our patrols, and we are spending more time there. So I did do a search for police calls to City Hall and to the SARC building. I checked the police calls for 2024 and then calls to date from January until today. In 2024, there were 14 calls to police, and in 2025, from January till now, the same number, 14. We do deal with open drug use and with dealing as we come across it. Some of our constraints with the open drug use is that there is that exemption to have 2.5 grams. Our stance right now is if they are using it in public and it's not grossly over that 2.5, it's what we call a no-case seizure, where they are arrested, we search them, we seize the drugs, and if it's a small amount, it's just sent with a request to Health Canada to have them destroyed.
Thank you. Any further questions, Councillor Eastmere? Is it fair to say, and I'm not trying to give you an out here, but given the open drug use by so many across this community, it is practically speaking impossible for the police to arrest folks in a meaningful way for drug use in a public place?
Yes, Your Worship.
Thank you. I appreciate your candor.
Your Worship.
Your Worship, I'm not sure if you've noticed Councillor Armstrong has her hand up as well.
Councillor Armstrong, sorry, can't ignore you.
Thank you. Yeah, I do have to leave in 10 minutes, so I just want to get my thoughts out there. I cannot support $400,000 going towards this project. I could maybe look at a fence, but even that's pushing it. we just told our citizens that, you know what, suck it up for the next 9 months because, you know, too bad, so sad. I didn't hear anything about these calls from the RCMP that are involving staff members. I've yet to see a WorkSafe complaint coming in from staff members. This is the first time I've been hearing about these issues, and I would have preferred, as Councillor Eastmer said, to have heard about this information earlier to get more information. And without proper stats, knowing how many staff were involved in these calls to the police, were there injuries, etc., I just can't support it this time. In the event that I don't get to know, then the people know where I stand. Thank you. If I don't get to vote.
Thank you. And Councillor Perino.
Could I put a motion on the floor, Your Worship?
Your Worship, we do have a delegation for this.
Yes, you do.
She
So-
left.
She left. Okay.
Yes. Could I put a motion on the floor? Okay, the motion, it's option number 2, that the Finance and Audit Committee provide no recommendation for action. If I get seconded, I'd like to.
Seconded by Councillor Hemmons.
But if I could speak to it, please?
Please.
I've been there, and I'm only there 2-3 times a week, sometimes 4 times a week for maybe an hour or 2. And I've seen enough that it is very disturbing. So I want the public to know this is what Mr. LaBerge is talking about is real. I saw a car accident where one of our staff's cars was damaged. I've seen drug use. I've seen drug sales. I've seen people on the lawns. It is really difficult. But I want to be really respectful when I say that everything that Mr. LaBerge talked about, the neighborhood that we heard the delegations from today, they have seen it firsthand. You ask Ruth Taylor whether or not she's seen it. She's seen it. You ask Mr. Gerard if his children have seen it. All of the delegations that we heard on the former topic this morning, they've seen what our staff see in the parking lot. Until we can take care of this problem for our community, I can't support this. Until we get that OPS closed, I can't support this. Mr. Shaw has sent us videos of open fires where he lives. This is appalling, but what our staff go through is real, and we should be dealing with it, but I can't deal with it until we take care of the community problem that we have. So I will be voting in favor of no recommendation for action at this time.
Thank you, Councillor Perino. My first instinct when this was mentioned is that I can't say that I'm in favor of it, and part of it's personal experience. I have watched the growing level of security surrounding political figures and legislatures and et cetera in the last few decades, and I understand the necessity of it. You know, we cannot forget the gunman who went into Parliament Hill. All of those events, I was there when the Clayoquot protesters decided it was appropriate to try and break the doors to the Legislative Assembly, and a group of us were standing there trying to hold them back from doing so in the 90s. And I have watched the security change at the Ledge from being able to wander the halls to any minister's office unperturbed, to a point where you can't enter the Legislative Assembly of this province, the building, Parliament buildings, without going through a thorough search, etc. My instincts are not to fortify, and so I come from that prejudice, if you will. Having said that, what Councillor Perino has said about our staff and what they suffer every day is what the neighborhood suffers, what people in Nanaimo suffer generally, and that's not to minimize any of it. And we have, as I pointed out in the media, we have a particular obligation at law to ensure a safe workplace. It's a different situation than a neighborhood. There's no question. But for me, this actually gets down to something a lot less, how shall I say, theoretical. It's just practical. Given the terrific and horrific nature of the incidents that Mr. LaBerge outlined and Mr. Hornby has outlined, I'm not satisfied that a fence is actually going to give us value for money, to be quite blunt. Right now, we already have a substantive number of CSOs, the RCMP on call, the bike patrol, already attending at the premises generally. Moreover, fencing, I think, contemplates something that that goes against my optimistic nature. It seems to contemplate that the OPS site will be in existence forever, that the level of street disorder we suffer will continue forever, or at least for the reasonably foreseeable future. You know, we've had pushback, and I'm sure one member of the audience will be very quiet, because he certainly pushed back when I suggested a public square down at the Gene Burns site, because it would be seen as a gathering place for the homeless and the unhoused and open drug use, et cetera, et cetera. I can't work on the premise that our social disorder is going to continue like this. So having said that, putting up a fence reflects a contemplation that it's going to continue, and indeed may presumably potentially get worse. But I'm just not satisfied that the fence is going to provide the security and safety or make much of a difference that makes it worthwhile doing it, as opposed to what is happening now. And I, as I say, live in the hopes that the housing that is being provided, the Heart and Hearth program, et cetera, will in fact make a noticeable difference with the population. And if it doesn't, then as I said in the earlier discussion, we will have to take other steps. I appreciate the work of staff. I appreciate the frustration and fear they feel. As many of you know, the staffer I work with most closely at City Hall is an very early arrival. Our custodian is there before everybody else, day in, day out, and I appreciate all that, but I'm just not satisfied that a fence is going to do the trick here. Having said that, if there's no further commentary, the motion is on the floor. The motion is that the Finance and Audit Committee provide no recommendation for action. All those in favor? And any opposed? Not seeing any. Thank you very much. Mr. Lindsay, in light of your earlier discussions.
Is there a question? I think, Your Worship, we will bring forward the balance of your items. So we'll distribute them over your next two council meetings before the end of the month. But certainly I can say today that the item that we were looking most forward to spending some time with you today, which was the capital discussion, we'll have that on Monday. We'll bring it to this Monday.
Thank you. That's a very important discussion. It merits a great deal of time. So on 7B, it looks like Frankie Naylor. Come on down, Frankie.
Frank Taylor, this is Ruth.
And Ben Taylor, pardon me, and bring the mic down to your level. Thank you.
They said that over 100 people have been coming into the hub, so I just want to know how many people they have actually housed.
Sorry, how many are actually housed?
How many homeless people that come into the hub that are looking to be housed, how many of them are actually housed? Have been housed in the 6 months that the hub has been open?
That's a good question, and unfortunately the people who might have been able to provide a specific answer, although it looks like maybe Ms. Wood can give us some assistance here. Good question.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the question. The report, right now we've got 170 people on the list for the hearth units that are coming on site. So we've had several people this week being transferred from that list into the hearth units. I don't have exact numbers of who because they're staggering the amount of people that are moving in. But that aside, I know that Island Crisis Care Studies just reported that they have 14 people that have gone into existing rental or private market or other supportive housing. So,
May I?
Councillor Hemmons wants to provide a bit of an answer too.
Thank you, Frankie, for the question. I just want to make sure you understand that there's two housing units that are currently being built, and they're not open right now, or they're open a little bit, and they're receiving residents kind of 2 and 3 a week. So the idea is when they're open fully, there will be houses for about 150 people.
Okay. Well, after supportive housing, if these people get out of supportive housing, where are they gonna go after?
That is such an amazing question. Ms. Wood, I see you going for it.
Yeah, really good questions. Important questions. So I think the committee may be aware too that we are working with BC Housing on this program called Heart and Hearth. And so the Hearth units that Councillor Hemmons has talked about are temporary housing that gets people off the street, and then the service providers work with them to find permanent housing for them. So sometimes, depending on the individual, it could be somebody who gets to rent their own private apartment, or it could be another private accommodation with family, or they might need more support. So then they get moved into permanent supportive housing. And so they work with BC Housing and the service providers to find that.
Okay, well, that answers my question. So thank you.
Thank you very much. The next is Josh Taylor. I'm going to guess that might be your sibling.
Dad.
Dad? Ah.
Dad.
This has become the Taylor Show, according to the list. Good evening, or afternoon, sorry.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out, well, first of all, I'm worried about what's the motivation for practices to change at the hub, because my understanding is that the outreach pharmacist bought the building in January 2024 for over $2 million. And then I'm hearing that, so this is, and these are all entrepreneurial people, doctors, business owners. They're going to get more funding. I don't even know if this discussion today about 500,000 is really that relevant. They're going to get more funding. And I think that there needs to be some measure of accountability. Like, I understand that a recent safety committee meeting, Dave LaBerge says this couldn't be a nuisance property. Well, there needs to be something there. Like, they are a nuisance property. Maybe they can't be that. They should have to pay for all the services that the community's putting on them, because they're making money, these doctors, and other people, other business owners, hospitals, pub owners, they have responsibility. They can't just do that. They can't just dump they can't.
Mr. Taylor, sorry to interrupt, but this is actually question period. If you have a question, we will try and answer, but this is, I appreciate you might.
Well, this is my first time and I'm very hungry.
Sorry.
This has been a
It's
long
okay.
meeting. So my question is, can we implement something into their business license so that they can actually have, because it's not going to, I don't think it'll change. I don't think there's any motivation to change. They got their funding. They don't have to move their door. They don't have to do anything. So I'm thinking, how do we expect this to get better if is there any mechanism that we can do? Can they be a nuisance property? Can there be something in their business license? Sorry, that's my question really.
We can't, I think, restrict it as far as business licenses go, and I look to staff to advise after I've tried to stumble through an answer. You may be driving towards our nuisance property bylaw, which exists if a nuisance is occurring on a property, but it's on a property. This is the same old problem. The nuisance, so to speak, of this is off the property lines. Now, I look to Mr. Lindsay and Mr. LaBerge if they can comment further by way of an answer to Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, we do have legal opinions that we can not hold service providers that are providing lawful, legitimate services responsible for the conduct of patrons that might use the service but create disorder in proximity off the property.
How do we expect anyone to take them as a tenant if there's no way that they can be controlled? Like, of course they can't get a tenant. That's my question. How do you expect anyone else to take them if there's no way to control them and their impacts on the community?
Look, I appreciate your frustration, and I'll just say this to close off. We have one more question. It's why, in certain cases, I have called repeatedly for secure and voluntary care, because you have people who are simply incorrigible and not capable of behaving in a civilized, responsible manner, nor caring for themselves and others. But that is something in provincial control. It's not something the city can fix. And Ms. Taylor, once again, on 7B and C.
I think this is my water. Okay, so the question I want to ask is around the assertion that I believe it was our social planner was basing. So the question that the neighborhood would be the same or worse off if the hub was closed. I think the entire community here today was telling Mayor and Council very clearly that we would take our chances with that and that we disagree. So I want to know, my question is, what data, what is being used based on, you know, that this will get worse if the hub is closed?
Ms. Wood, do we have any data per se, apart from what I will call the obvious, and that is that if people don't access services, they're more likely to pass, I suppose?
Yeah, through your worship. I think we were looking at the stats that were provided to us by RCMP and CSO over time, and you can see that there's not a big shift. Yes, definitely we're seeing that concentration outside the hub, but when you actually look at the comparison data, there's not a large difference to pre and current post-hub. So that's in the report. And I think what I mentioned was that I think that if we shut down the hub, I don't want there to be any, you know, misperceptions that all the problems are going to go away. It's going to manifest in a different way. We're still going to see it in the neighborhood. And so that was my response. And I know that we have seen that when services have shut down. When our winter shelters shut down, we saw an increase. You know, we see that increase. Even last year, prior to the hub, when the 3 winter shelters shut down, we had an increase of concentration of folks in the downtown area because they had no services. So there is a general idea and a common understanding amongst the communities, and the work that we do with BC Housing is that when there's services for people to go to, then you'll see less of that behavior. Of course, the problem is compounded with the sheer number of people that we're seeing that need supports.
Okay. I'd like to take my chances. That's all I'll say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Motion for adjournment. Moved Councillor Eastmere, seconded Councillor Perino. All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone who attended. Thank you particularly for staff who've had a long morning